welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show on a Sunday, our 1 week away from the draft, as we get hyped, well, relatively hyped with as hyped as you get with 3 draft picks. And let me get my video going here. Always forget one thing, don't we? But we wanted to do this live stream show today as we're previewing this draft coming up in the next week. Of course, we're going to be doing 3 days of live stream draft coverage. And I want to just do a last kind of overhead view on what we're looking at as we're going in through, as we're doing the last little bit of preparation in our own little looks. I know many of you are as deep, if not some of you, I think even deeper into some of the film study this year than even I've been able to have a chance to go. So it's very interesting as far as I think we've got a really good view this year, not just from me, but within the community here of some of these players and what we've seen in them, what we've liked in them. And when we get to draft day, I hesitate to say that maybe we will even be ready for who the Seahawks might pick, or at least when they pick, we're not going to be scrambling towards Google and seeing if we can figure out who the hell it is that they're selecting. Either way, I really do like what we're looking at in this draft. It's a fun draft. It's not one of those drafts that's loaded to the hilt from the first to the last selection. There's been some certain narratives out there that are a little bit incorrect, and even myself was caught victim to this where, you thought originally these players would not be playing, a lot of them into the last year of their college career. They would have opted out. Many of them did. This was going to cause a lot of guys to fall, get picked later on. Guys that shouldn't get picked earlier. This is why we've all gone through the logic and reasoning process behind why you make the Jamal Adams trade and maybe perhaps give up more draft capital than you would really like to have given up. But within that was also the thought process that down the line of this draft, you'd end up with some undrafted free agents and a load of them who should have really been drafted if, logically speaking, they had had that final year of eligibility. Or even not just a matter of not opted out. There's many players that just only played a few games, got an injury, just said, to hell with it. I got an injury and the COVID. Nah, we'll wait this through. Or the teams that didn't play a full schedule where the player was willing to play, but they just didn't play their all allotment. But what's happened is actually this year we've seen a lot of players, instead of opting in at the normal number range you see. I forget what the total number is, but I believe this year it's down by about 25% or so in the number of total players that have opted into this year's NFL draft. And so that's going to pare down things. Obviously, the diamond in the rough is a lot more opportune towards them potentially shining in this year, that you see that gleam happening after the draft, and you know it because you saw something on tape in a flash that other teams missed because they didn't have enough to really chew on with it. That certainly is potentially there, and I would trust in Schneider to be just the type of guy to be able to unearth that diamond. But it's still not as heavily as likely, I think, as we had thought maybe even a couple months ago when we were just beginning this draft process, because of so many players that are going to go be back to school. If anything, this does build up, buff up, increase the load of draft prospects you're going to see in next year's draft. So while we're not seeing that play out in this year's draft, it will 100% be playing out in next year's draft, where these players are trusting that they have that extra film to go off of. I went back and looked at recent, this is just raw numbers to kind of look at, nothing to get too deep in or take away from. But I looked at the last 5 drafts of our Seahawks and where they selected, and I specifically locked in on really the top 5 rounds. I think everything, you can make even the argument 5, 6, 7 should more be clumped together than 5 is clumped with 4. But just for the heck of it, I put that in there as an extra. But I stopped about 5th because it's kind of a crapshoot once you get 6th and 7th past as to what teams are picking. I think it's more in that top 5 rounds, if even you could say even the top 4 rounds. You're able to, I think, get a little bit of a lens into what teams tend to gravitate towards on draft day. Because teams do have kind of just a type on draft day, where this is a position we value above other positions, and when we're going to look at to attack in the draft, that we don't necessarily want to look and attack in free agency. And when I did this list, I had a few ideas on what I thought that players, the ones we picked the most in the top 5 rounds over the last 5 years have been, and it was a little bit surprising as far as just some of the results. So we had 6 defensive ends in the last 5 years taken in the top 5 rounds, 4 wide receivers, 5 guards, 5 safeties. Whew, it's a lot of safeties we've taken in the last 5 years. And then when the safety one we're going to come back to in a second, but that's a pretty decent little number. 3 running backs, 4 linebackers, 2 centers, and 3 tight ends. Again, this is all in the top 5 rounds of the last 5 years of drafting. So you took 6 defensive ends. That's the number one on the list of the position you've most attacked. I might argue that that being the case, that almost in certain ways makes it one of the more unlikely positions that you're going to probably address in this draft, especially considering you've also brought back Mayoa, Carlos Dunlap, Kerry Hyder, Alden Smith, maybe, and all the young guys. But wide receivers there at 4, guards at 5. That was interesting. You drafted 5 guards in the top in the last 5 years in the top 5 rounds. For all those folks thinking the Seahawks don't put any resources into the position, they do put resources into it. They just don't necessarily draft it well. The one interesting one on this as well is in those top 5 rounds over the last 5 years, you've only drafted 1 cornerback. One. So for a lot of folks out there that are forecasting the Seahawks to make with that first pick in the second round, the player to be a cornerback, and it very well could. There is those type of players. There's those Seahawky-like cornerbacks in this particular draft. Though it may appear that's where they might lean, historically speaking, over the last 5 years, that's not where they've been. And certainly if you go the previous 5 years before 2015, they were not drafting highly in the cornerback position either, but only 1. That was the least amount of position picked in the top 5 rounds of the last 5 years. The 5 safeties I thought was interesting. 5 safeties taken in the last 5 years in the top 5 rounds. And then you add on to that, you've also traded a 5th round pick for Quandre Diggs. And then we've got a 1st and a 3rd round pick out of this upcoming draft allotted towards Jamal Adams. That's a very lot of resources to be digging into the safety position, a position which supposedly is at last I heard, supposed to be a little devalued in the NFL. That's what the analytic folks tell us. But I can't help on this one but go back to the thought process that Coach Carroll, being a former safety back at his days in Pacific, I think he just tends to gravitate towards liking safeties, and they continue to keep selecting them. I would say that this data in itself probably illustrates that it's not out of whack, that maybe, as crazy as it sounds, they go right back to the well again this year. I don't think so. But with these Seahawks in the draft and how they run their show with it, they are truly a creature unto themselves and very hard to predict because of that. So interesting in that respect. The defensive end was the one that really jumped out to me. It was also the first pick in 2015, 2017, 2019, and it was the second pick in 2020 and 2018. So they've really tended to really not only go after the defensive end position with a lot of picks in those early rounds, but then they've also really gone high to go after the defensive ends in early rounds. And yet we end up arriving back into this offseason where, you're bringing in Hyder, Mayo, Dunlap, because you don't quite trust the young guys. So this isn't meant to be a tearing down of John Schneider's recent draft history. It certainly is what it is as far as the data is concerned. And you've taken your swings at defensive end, you've taken your swings at safety, and it's not necessarily hit. So maybe there's some lessons to be taken for the Seahawks from that. The lesson I would take being that go on the market and find your defensive ends. Don't try to break them out of their little seedling shell and put them in the soil and have to sit there and water them and change the light cycles. Go get them when they're ready to roll and allot those resources in other places if you can. So let's drop over here to the chat. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I figured today let's do maybe a little bit of, if you guys want to post your thoughts, who you think the Seahawks should pick, who's the guy that you'd like to come out of this draft. Who's the one you want to come out of this draft away from? Doesn't matter if he's in the second round, third round, wherever he may be. Who is the one that really excites you watching the tape and has jumped out to you? I'll give you guys a few of my guys as we kind of go along here. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I appreciate you guys joining in. Please do smash on that like button if you happen to be checking us out and you like what you're, of course, watching. I wouldn't want you to hit like if you didn't like this. But let's hop in. Shervins, how you doing? Good to see you. Ryan Ostison. Hey, TJ. What's up? I got to get 3 hours to go Hawks, TJ. I was figuring I want to go a little later today, TJ. I figured let's go a little later. Thomas E. JC Horn, because we need a corner. Go Hawks. Hey, JC Horn's fantastic. He would be, essentially he slots into my number 1 cornerback on the board now for me. It was Caleb Farley. The back injury has me a little bit worried. But he's a player who would be a great fit in Seattle. He'd know the scheme backwards and front, no problems right from the jump. He would be awesome. Best cornerback that we've had here since Sherman. No argument there if he were to happen to fall. Unfortunately, I think he's probably going to be the number 2 cornerback taken off the board after Sertan, I believe. It's him and Sertan are neck and neck. Shervins, what's up, what's up? Master Chief, hello. Enrique, who are we taking with our first pick? Enrique, I'm going to lean towards still Creed Humphrey because it's a matter of who I want. And if it's not Creed Humphrey, I'm going to be leaning down through the offensive lineman. It ain't going to be me making some sexy selection over here, telling you something like Rondell Moore or Tutu Atwell or maybe even Terrace Marshall, who's now starting, I think, to drop a little bit because of some injury concerns here last late minute. But I like offensive line. I've looked at this through, as you guys know, I like to do. I try to go through things logically and reason things out. And my beginning point always is at this point, I want to keep Russell Wilson here long term. I want him to be our quarterback forever. That means continuing to address an offensive line that while you have addressed it a little bit this offseason, you've not gone full measure. You've gone about 3/4 of a measure, but we need that center position just filled out a little bit better, or we need a swing tackle with a little bit more talent than what Cedric Abuja is going to offer, or Jamarco Jones is going to offer. So I'd like to see that because I think that makes a happy Russ, that makes a better line, that makes a better potential season, and I think that just opens those inroads up to getting us back to a peace agreement, a no fire zone, all that type of stuff as far as this team's concerned between management and Russ. Maxwell Zern says, count down the days. Me as well, Maxwell. Me as well. It's still get hyped. We only got 3 picks, but get hyped. And man, you never know. There may be some crazy trade that happens. I'll tell you, with a guy like Schneider, everything is in game except for him potentially trading up in the first round. That is the only off-limit item he has. But everything else completely in play. Michael Barker, what are the Ravens up to? Big trade and Lamar Jackson rumors? Any blockbusters coming? Ooh. Well, it was interesting to see them make the trade with the Kansas City for Orlando Brown. And it was understandable that they kind of had to at that point because Orlando Brown didn't want to play right tackle anymore. They were going to get Ronnie Staley back from his, ACL this year. And so it made sense that they were going to be stuck to where they're going to have to move off from him. I have not necessarily, I didn't see anything rumors popping up with Lamar Jackson, but I could completely understand why at this point they would maybe look to do something outside the box with him. Because the thing that they've done with Lamar Jackson, and the one thing that I would kind of applaud Baltimore for doing, is that they've been the first team to really, 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 really embrace the model of getting the most out of that quarterback on his rookie deal, that mobile quarterback on his rookie deal, to get all of that out of him before you have to get to the point of paying him, and then don't potentially pay him because you've probably torn him up a bit. You probably worked him down some. He's had a lot of carries, a lot of hits. And for the team that would potentially trade for Lamar Jackson, you're getting a guy who's had his share of dings and pings here in the NFL. And let's face it, he's more built like a Michael Vick type in sort of his lithe build, where those guys are going to get kind of beat up a bit. And it's hard for me to see if a guy like Cam Newton can't get to the age of 30 running his game that way at 6'5" and defensive end size. How is Lamar Jackson going to do it running similarly with this reckless abandon? I'm not going to slide. Let's go for every yard. Let's run me all the time. Let's do designed runs. Mark Roman, who's the guy that's the offensive coordinator there, comes from the San Francisco 49ers, same Niners that were running the scheme with Kaepernick there, where they just went run heavy. I mean, we saw it in the playoff game at one point where they decided, okay, we're going to turn Colin Kaepernick into a running back, and we'll run Frank Gore as our lead blocker, and let's see how this goes. And it was a cool unveiling, and it worked for a while against us. We shut it down eventually over the course of the game, but I've long wondered with the Ravens what they would do here, because we've watched them hold off. They weren't one of those teams that was early in on giving their quarterback money. They've kind of been sitting here watching, kind of not, okay, we like what you're doing. We're like, oh, MVP. Okay, that's nice. But they are a very smart organization, and they don't tend to make stupid decisions, especially with long-term money and the long-term future. And they got off Flacco when they knew it was done. Maybe they feel like the best days of Lamar Jackson will be coming kind of behind him if he can't develop as a passer. And there's times where you watch him and you wonder, has he developed as a passer? Master Chief says the background's looking lit. Ah, love it, guys. Glad you like it. I figured you guys would dig some of this, kind of brighten up the background a little bit, give you guys something else to look at other than this thing right here. Zorn76 says draft a quarterback now. So I know that's a little bit of a sentiment out there, Zorn. You're not alone in that one. Are you going to do draft day live? Ask Michael, by the way. Yeah, I will be doing all 3 days of the draft. First, all 7 rounds. You guys will have me live here. So I'll even try to go a little bit live before the draft on draft day, but you will see me every single day talking this one through. This is one of my favorite times of year. So absolutely, 100%. Zorn, just in regards to drafting a quarterback now, because there's some people think Kellen Mond will drop down to us. He won't. It's going to be a matter of making a decision between two guys like David Mills and Jamie Newman, which I don't necessarily like making that choice at the second round because you're pushing at that point to pick not the best player available on the board, but now you're stretching to go for a quarterback because you're worried about the desperation of the quarterback situation should Russell Wilson long-term want to move on. I don't necessarily like that thinking because what that thinking does is it doesn't do one of two things. Like, let's not get caught halfway with this situation. We're either in on Russell Wilson now for the foreseeable future, or at least for this foreseeable year, at least for this year, or we're not. And he's going to be traded. There is no in-between ground here because if you choose an in-between ground, it'll be a lot like what the Packers did last year. Oh, let's get cute. We'll get our quarterback of the future and we'll get our running back of the future. And then you get in the championship game. And once again, you seem to be topped out and you seem to, boy, if you just had maybe one or two more useful players on this team out on the field at this moment, maybe we'd be able to push a little bit past this spot that we've gotten stuck on. And I think that's what that would lead you into believe, because when you select the quarterback now, what you're going to do is tell it as a telltale sign that we intend to trade Russell Wilson next year. Full stop. That means he's essentially going to be managing this team for one more year, and everyone's going to force it to try to make it work. Does any of us think that could work in that situation as far as that team at that point is on some sort of Super Bowl potential run? I don't think so. I think you close down this season by making that draft pick, not to mention the player that you then pass on by taking a quarterback who could have been on the field and actually assisting the team for like a center, like a starting center, versus having a quarterback holding a clipboard who's not going to even be playing till next year. And let's not even add into the other respect of the point of getting these young quarterbacks early and drafting them early is to be able to get them on their rookie early years. When you get a guy in the second, third, fourth round, it's not like getting him in the first round. You get the 3 years of club control, but then by year four, they're going to want to get paid if they're anything. So if you have him sit for a year, now we're talking about only 2 cheap years, all to have this bridge back for Russell in case we want to trade him in a year from now. I can't quite get behind that philosophy. I understand it. I do, but I just can't get behind it in that respect. Shervins, I heard Eric Crocker expressing some concerns about Jamar Chase. He was saying how Jamar got a lot of his production from contested catches and sometimes struggled to get separation. Thoughts? Yeah, Jamar Chase was out there smoking fools at 19 years old. File this one, Shervins, under the same regard you'd file the Penny Sewell talk. For those folks out there that were going to tell you the Rashawn Slaters are better than Penny Sewell. When you measure one prospect up who's 22, 23 years old versus a prospect who was, playing his football at 19 years old, 20 years old, it's a little bit of a difference. A year makes a big difference at that age. And Jamar Chase, who just took a year off when he was 19 years old, was beating the hell out of the best conference in the nation week in and week out. And whether he was doing that with contested catches or lack of separation or anything else, I think is irrelevant. He's going to be able to play in this league. He is my favorite wide receiver in this draft. I know that people will tell me Kyle Pitts should be just. Kyle Pitts I'm putting as a tight end, and I don't know what I might even still struggle at that point because I think Jamar is just that good. He's better than any of the wide receivers in last year's draft. Probably the best wide receiver we've seen come out for a while now. Maybe since McLaurin and DK Metcalf. He's in that. I think he's in that mold of things, and he's going to be a freak when he gets here. And look what happens when he turns 21, Shervin, and suddenly, oh man, he's suddenly fast. And boys, it's like he's gotten a couple of years of getting bigger and stronger, and that's how it goes. These guys develop. They're not what they are at 19 years old. So I think people sometimes forget about the age, and they see him on the college level and put them all at about the same point. Superdog 1038. How you doing, Superdog? Good to see you in here, buddy. Do you think Seattle will draft an offensive line? I absolutely do. I'd say your positions of draft at this point are going to be offensive line, and that's going to be down to one of 3 things, kind of center, left guard, and then a tackle. Left tackle, right tackle. They won't be. I don't think picky in that respect. You've got Shell on a 1-year deal left. You've got Dwayne Brown on a 1-year deal left remaining. Plus, you'd like to have a little bit of depth there for any kind of injury. Both those two guys, one guy had an injury last year. Dwayne Brown's got a pretty rich history, and he's pretty old. So I would think that they're going to somewhere pick an offensive lineman. And right now I'm making the prediction it's going to be with the first pick that they take at this point. And Maxwell Stern, imagine they draft a quarterback with a 56th pick. I would be definitely disappointed. Yeah, you and me both, Maxwell. You and me both. It's what I would call a nice, cute selection. Very cute. Very cute by the team. And again, I understand the philosophy. I don't want to knock the folks that would like to lean to go this way, but you're number one, you're not getting one of the better quarterbacks in this draft. By that point, you're picking the sixth, seventh quarterback in this draft, and you're doing it in the second round. That's usually not a good recipe for that quarterback being great. It's a little bit of like what you had with the LJ Collier situation. You went into that draft going, well, we're going to definitely get a defensive end with that first pick. The best guy on our board will be who we pick. Don't care who it is. And then what happened? All those guys got picked through the first round. You're left with really no defensive ends who should be a first round pick. And, it's pretty light even at that beyond that point. And you over-select for a guy like LJ Collier because you get yourself just locked in. That's bad drafting, bad draft philosophy, in my opinion. And again, what is to be gained by drafting the quarterback this year versus going after it next year? Next year, there may be a variety of other quarterbacks available that, we didn't know were going to be available this year on teams right now. So the options are going to be much more. It's much more beneficial, in my opinion, to just sit and wait if you know Russell Wilson's for sure going to be here for another year. I've heard some people are on the Waddle train, Waddle number one train. Yeah, and Jalen Waddle. Let me make sure. Oh, D Nugget, thank you for the $3 donation, buddy. I appreciate it. And I salute you, sir. Thank you so much. You're always very kind. He says, let's dono early. Excited for draft this week. All right, man. You're kicking it off right. I've heard some people on the Waddle train. Says Shervin. Yes, Shervin, there's definitely a lot of folks that like Waddle. And look, he could come in day one and become one of the best, if not the best and most dynamic slot guys in the league. Can he play on the outside? Maybe. You saw some of it at Alabama, not a lot at Alabama. He's not Henry Ruggs. I'll say this. It wouldn't be as bad as taking Henry Ruggs if you pick this guy, 8 slots ahead of Ruggs, because he has the legitimate speed. And whereas, Ruggs was a guy that just like, I'm going to catch the ball, I'll get it in space, and I'm going to use angles in my speed to just outrun you. And that's kind of just, he's just freakish that way. And that gets caught up to a little bit at the NFL level because everybody's kind of fast. This guy's more of a football player. He's a guy that can break tackles. He can go up and high point a football. He's got receiver skills. And I think he probably could play on the outside. It's not like he's a midget, but it's, or a little person, I'm sorry. But I can't see him as my number one receiver. I think people, again, when you're measuring the two, one's going to be a couple of years older, and look at what Jamar Chase did in that last year, and look at what those catches he did make. And I understand contested catches and why people knock him as far as, well, if he's relying on this, can he really do that at the next level then as his skill? And it's a hard skill to replicate at the NFL level. You want more in separation, but I think that's going to come with him with maturation. Adrian D, whatever happened to Alex Leatherwood? Or is he going in the first round, and that's why I haven't heard much of him since we have a second? And how's your day? My day was great, Adrian, and thank you for your patronage, one of my patrons. Yes, Alex Leatherwood I think he's a guy that people got a pretty quick read and beat on fast, which is that he's a guy who's going to play in the NFL. Probably not a lot of star potential, in my opinion. The one thing that you have with him is that sort of 5-star-ish prospect background thing to him, in the respect of he's a guy, if you went to the left tackle factory and you said, draw him up, he's got that Tyron Smith type body, long arms, just looks like he's built to be a left tackle. He moves pretty well, but the natural feel at the position and some of the things that come there on tape where it can get a little sloppy, relying a little bit on that natural physical speciality that he has, that those Alabama guys will sometimes have, and why sometimes, frankly, many of them then do sort of fail out at the NFL level, because they can't just rely on being freakishly more talented than the next guy across from them. I do think he would be a guy probably pretty solid and safe as far as a pick goes, where his floor is going to be pretty high, his ceiling is going to be probably pretty low. And if the light ever does go on with this guy, you're going to have a marvelous left tackle in this league, because if he can put the technical stuff together and get himself cleaned up and with a little more ferocity to him, doesn't show a lot of nastiness out there, well, hey, then he could become really good because he's got all the skill set to do it. Shervins says these are the can't miss 3 prospects in my opinion: Trevor Lawrence, Penei Sewell, Kyle Pitts. I would add in Jamar, but again, this is my maybe just own personal thing with this. But I agree with everything on your list there. I agree with everything on your list. I'm thinking right now, if there's one more guy I might say that would be my can't miss, like you just know he's going to be all right, no doubt about it. But I guess you can't exactly. The corners do have a little bit of question with them. Like J.C. Horn, is he going to be able to be as physical as he was in college, where he just mauled guys up the field? Sertan, is he going to be able to just kind of rely on his that Alabama thing again, just sort of relying on his natural ability and feel for things out there rather than really having that great technical footwork, beautiful back pedal, all that type of stuff. I'll think about those, Shermans. That's a good list, though. Maxwell, right now, what's your prediction for the 56th pick? Trade down? I would say that would be my number one prediction, would say you're going to see us trade down to probably the top of the third round. I would be hesitant to see us move past the early single digits in the third round, but yeah, somewhere probably right about there, because that gets you the 5th round pick, I think. That gets you probably like a mid 5th round pick back. And then that's a nice little extra pick to get in a nice little extra spot of the draft, where one of those guys that had opted out the previous year will float down to that 5th round area, I would guess. Shervins, who are some wide receivers you're eyeing that we could potentially take? Let me get my little graphic thing up here. Let's get over the wide receivers. So when I ran a mock a couple of weeks ago, Shervins, and I was in the mock. What you're seeing here up on the screen is going to be the available wide receivers by their ranking with, of course, Pro Football Focus, who were available basically when I had us picking, which would have been in the early 3rd roundish or so. So you're through the first tier of receivers. Obviously, you're kind of through the second tier of receivers. I've long thought that if they went out and got Josh Palmer, this is exactly the type of Seahawk pick, the left field type Seahawk pick in the 2nd round that they would make. That is exactly the type of one that would just typically kind of throw half the fan base out of whack. Like, you could have got him in the 4th round. You could have got him in the 4th round. But he's been a late riser, horrible quarterback play. Look good at the Senior Bowl, but he's all right. He's good. I don't know if I love him a lot because some of his ability on those contested catch stuff down the field, for instance, I wonder on, and that especially needs to be something with Russell I want to pair with. But Cade Johnson, Tylan Wallace, interesting guys there. I think both can play on the outside and do pretty well for you. Amon St. Brown. I like his tape a lot. I like him better as a prospect than his brother. And he's a guy that intrigues me as well. Because, again, I think he can do some stuff on the outside. He's not going to be just an inside guy. Darden's going to be totally an inside guy. This guy's just like a little jitterbug out there. He's just he is doing every little juke you can imagine in a 5-yard space. He'll do 10 moves. But he's exciting and he's fast and he'll be very good, I think, in the open field, even at the NFL level with some of that ability. Small, much like Tutu Atwell. Another guy that's going to be in that 5'9" range. Horrible last year. Then the previous year, he was really dominant at the college level as far as a wide receiver goes. I don't like him because he weighed in about 150 pounds at his pro day, but he's one of those guys that will be up there on the board and available. Ilmir Marset that I've got here, I like him a lot better. I like him better than Tutu Atwell. I like him better than Seth Williams. Of course, Dax Mine, I like him better than Dax Mine as well. Get him off there. I probably even like him better than Amon-Ra St. Brown right now. They're probably pretty neck and neck, but I like a lot of the potential. And I would add on to this, I think you'll probably have Stevenson from Houston will also be available there. And if I had to pick one of these receivers, that'd be the guy who I think will be available there, but wasn't on this particular draft list that I did. But that would be another guy that would be very interesting. So those would be probably the names you're looking at as being available there when we select. Zoran says we need another tight end. Disley is a great guy, but pedestrian player since injury. This is a make or break year for Will. Well, if the general manager feels like, and Coach Carroll feels like he's not able to come back at this point, and that's at this point, that's where it's at, that he has lost that measure of juice in his legs that he had coming out, specifically the short area burst and explosion that allowed him in his first 2 years to be really good for a couple of games, I think, and that's kind of gone, is like what, to your point, that it seems like a little bit that it is, then I think they could jump. Is a Frere move from Penn State, the baby Gronk guy that everybody talks about, is he available? We'll see. It would probably be, I will say, Zorn, if they do go for a tight end there, it's going to be then more of an inline guy because they've got their move tight end in Everett. So it will be a guy that's going to be more of the bigger, can block and catch kind of guy. I would tend to think with this, though, they have so many other needs, Zorn, as far as linebacker, needs on the offensive line, another wide receiver. Make the argument, maybe, well, cornerback for sure, running back, that those are maybe more pressing and that they may just be, whether it's optimistic or not, happy to just see how this will play out with Disley as they leaned into the season. And if they've got to make a trade at the last minute for a guy like Howard or David Njoku or some tight end that's maybe in a little bit of a doghouse with the team, but yet very talented, they could probably make that trade down the line too as well. Maxwell, who's ready to see John work his magic? Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. It's always amazing because you always go, oh, he's got himself up. He's like a trapped wild animal inside a house, into a little corner. And they've got the pepper spray on one side and a thing, and he somehow gets out of it. And cat's fighting over here. And somehow he finds his way out of it, gets himself out of the house, just making moves, doing little matrix runs up the wall and stuff. Gets out of the house with 8 picks somehow. Shervin says, outside of Surtain, Horn, and Farley, who are your favorite corners in the draft? Great deal on that. Great question. I'm sorry. I like Melifonwu out of Syracuse. He's a much better player than his brother was. He seems like if you watch him playing football, I feel like he loves playing football, and that's sort of some of the questions with his brother. He would be a great fit, I think, in Seattle's scheme. Campbell is awesome with Georgia. I mean, just a real fluid athlete, and he's just solid. I'm not as big on Stokes necessarily. Sorry about the dog barking. They're freaking out. Something's happening upstairs. Not as big on Stokes. I like Rondarius Williams is another guy out of Oklahoma State. I like him quite a bit in his fit and where he'd go, and I think he's going to be a little bit later where he'll drop. I really love Israel Mukumu. Israel Mukumu Shervins is this is Brandon Browner 2.0. He's minus some of the things Brandon could do. He's not the tackler Brandon. He's not that fierce guy like Brandon. But in coverage, what he can supply, I think is much different. D Nugget, did you move back permanently from Hawaii? Yes, I did. I am now back in my state of Washington, where I belong. He's back home. He is back where he belongs. Jace, I made a new logo for my channel, posted it in your Discord. Could you check it out after the stream? Yeah, of course I will, Jace. Good to see you on in here, man. UE2K, Seahawks need to readjust their draft year, just like they've readjusted their off-season actions this year. A paradigm shift is needed if they hope to change in playoff woes. I would agree with you, UE2K. I think if you want to go into this draft and completely hammer in on just taking a need or whatnot, I think that's a little bad. I mean, I know I'm advocating for going for center, but that's partially because I feel like the best player available on the board at that point will be like a guy like Creed Humphrey. And if not him, I'm okay with the best player on the board being your left guard or best player on the board being left tackle or right tackle. The talent in this draft is so rich at those positions to a degree that I have to think those would be one of the better positions versus going out and grabbing a corner or something else, or a wide receiver. We just saw the guys that be available in wide receiver. I think the linemen are better than those players I just posted out there as far as options go. So that would be where I would look at it too as well. I don't know if that's what you meant by it, but I piggybacked off that. So, Randall McDaniel, what's up, Brody? How you doing? I'm doing amazing over here. Doing awesome. It's a little cold here. Back, my thin blood here is getting used to this Washington weather again now. So lips are getting all dry and all that. Jordan 76, I'm not interested in John repeating 2019, which I saw one good pick, DK, and then 10 players who are meh. Yeah, you look at the drafting history, and I went back today and looking at it, and you look at those picks, and you look at those years, and 2017 Zorn's another one that stands out to me, where you really just kind of whiffed on a lot of picks through there, and you took a lot of selections. And as he was saying, 2K was talking about the need for readjusting a strategy. This is where you could readjust your strategy, and it's going to be hard to do in this particular draft with just 3 picks. But I think as we move forward, it would be smarter for Schneider to think a little bit more along the lines of attacking more for types of players so that you really want to get, that you really think are going to be good things, as opposed to throwing them all in this pile and saying they're all about right here. So we could be picking 53 or we can be picking 67, and it will get about the same player. I don't necessarily love going at it from that. I feel like you should be able to parse it down a little bit more, accurately. Jace, if you're able to lower the brightness on your TV, it's a little blurry bright. I'll try to play with it a little bit. I tried to do it a bit before, but some of it is I chose an 1980s game today, Jace. So it's just not a high quality video game necessarily, but I'll be switching it up every one. So I'll always put a different one up here for my great Seahawk moment videos up behind me. But yeah, it's kind of, I tried to play the TV a little bit, but it just kind of looked how it looked no matter what I did. D Nugget just smashed the like button. Thank you, D Nugget. Appreciate you doing that. And thank you for the donation. Randall says, I'd like to see us come out with round 2 wide receivers with at least one going no later than round 3. I want more firepower for Russell Wilson. Well, certainly as we stand right now with them not going into free agency and bringing in a wide receiver at this point and letting David Moore go and just sort of sitting idly by, they have set the stage to go draft a wide receiver. And I would probably be surprised if they didn't. I mean, I think with coming out of this draft, it's wide receiver, offensive lineman, and a cornerback are kind of the 3 things I think with linebacker trailing in there as a number 4. So those would be probably the positions I'd say they'd come out of. But I'd have to think at least one's coming out, Randall, and I'd be okay with 2. I'm not as overblown. I think some of the guys in this draft from about the round 5 on, I think some of them are being a little bit elevated because of the fact that the draft at the top so high with really good receivers and good quality receivers. So I do wonder that a little bit in picking the late guys. But certainly, like you said, no later than round 3, you're inside that section at that point. You're still getting one of the better guys. Fish says, I like Benjamin St. Juste. All right. I know there's a lot of folks out there in Seahawk land that are looking at Benjamin. You know me, Fish, with him. I will go. I couldn't find much tape on him, but the tape I did find, like the Penn State game, that was a rough one for me. Jace, I want Israel Mukumu for cornerback, and if we are to draft a center, I want Creed Humphrey or Quinn Miners. Works for me, Jace. Works for me right down the line. If we came out of this draft with Creed Humphrey and Israel Mukumu, I will be singing John Snyder's praises big time. Big time. I will be very stoked about both of those 2 picks. Adrian D, I've been speaking highly of Trevor Lawrence because of his talent. I think we should draft him. What do you think of this possible decision? Well, I think you're alone on that one. You're out on that island, Adrian. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, he's a good player. It's fun to watch this process break down, the quarterback process break down, and people are trying to pick him apart a little bit now and go after his mentality and does he really want to win? Is football really that important to him? These kind of guys that come down the block like this, it's just not often. I know there's those people that are putting their hype behind Zach Wilson, and geez, it seems like almost at this point there's some analysts out there that would push Trevor Lawrence down to number 3, which seems ridiculous. But I think he's going to turn out to be a pretty good player. Every bit, I think, as good as what we saw out of a guy like Justin Herbert last year. Maybe not in year 1, but we will see that kind of player, I think. Fish, if we should trade back with our second, get a third and a 4th draft, draft Drake Jackson, or Josh Myers in the 3rd, and in the 4th we can get Israel or St. Juste in the 4th. That's about right. Or get a 3rd and a 4th draft. 3rd. You're probably getting a 5th if you trade back, Fish. Probably not getting a 4th for trading back to the 3rd. But my only thing with I've got my issues with St. Juste, but I like the other guys. Go Hawks. Apparently, Brevin Jordan has a lot of contact with Seattle. Maybe we go full on 2 tight end. Well, if they were doing that, they would be going with a very innovative state of things at that point. Go Hawks, because not only are you then looking to go more 2 tight end, you're looking to go, feasibly speaking, with 2 move tight ends on the football field. And usually in football, when you're going to go to a 2 tight end set, you'll have maybe 1 inline guy and 1 move tight end, or you'll have just 2 inline guys. It's going to be pretty rare that you're going to have 2 move guys at the line of scrimmage. The reason being is that one of them's got to be on the line. You can't have both of them off the line of scrimmage being impeded from being, basically pressed to the line of scrimmage. So you're putting one of them into a tough position because they tend to be a little bit undersized. And Brevin Jordan is very much in the mold a little bit of Gerald Everett, being that he's not your traditional inline tight end guy. So Seattle could go that route. He's a very fun athlete to watch, fun player out there playing, but he's got some limitations to his game. And as far as a blocker goes, he really struggled in the tape that I watched as a blocker. Really struggled. But maybe they're going to look to go that route. That would be that would be very interesting. Because again, didn't think he had a great pro day either. Jason McEward, what's up, Brandon? Love to see a center who better than Ethan Postic and a cornerback, plus somehow grab a good wide receiver. We do. We have a Super Bowl. Do we have a Super Bowl team? Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on how they close this out, Jason. If this is a Super Bowl team, if they do that, but I'm with you. You can get the center, and there's a couple guys that you could be getting there in that second round. Where if Humphreys is gone, well, is Dickerson there? Well, if Dickerson's gone, is Quinn Miners there? You can go through some names as far as looking at that center position into that second round that will probably be available. And those guys will, it's nothing to say that all three of those guys can't be very good centers in this league. Certainly is going to be relying upon the scheme they go to and what they're asked to do, but no reason that you couldn't have all three of those guys end up turning out to be players in this league. So, and this is the one time that's one of the reasons why I'm okay in this situation, sort of plugging. It's not even a need really. You have Posick there. That's why you brought Posick in, so you could do a best player available. If there's some magical guy who slides down, if Caleb Farley with his back slides down, if Terrace Marshall with his medical stuff slides down, you can be in a position to grab one of those guys if they're higher up on your board. But if not, you've got three guys who have a very high probability of being high up on their board where they pick there, and it just so happens to be for the center position. Not too shabby. Matthias 23451 says, what are the odds either that Alabama center falls to us in the second or an elite cornerback? More likely that the center falls, because we've seen historically speaking in the draft medical issues and torn ACLs and those type of things will drop you down in the draft to a degree. He is the type of player who could cause a team to just realize that, especially the leadership angle that he offers. A little bit bigger, maybe that'll help. The leadership angle that he offers, in addition to being such a freakish guy at the center position, as far as what he offers when he was healthy, at least, might be just enough to push him over the top to being picked up ahead of us. But he's going to probably fall. An elite cornerback falling to us, yeah, like a Tyson Campbell guy could be there where you're picking. He could become an elite cornerback. So, man, the corners are just so deep, Matthias. I don't want to kind of hedge on your question, but both of those scenarios are kind of likely to where you could be picking from. You could be faced with looking at Landon Dickerson or Tyson Campbell, Landon Dickerson or Israel Melifonwu. Not Israel. I just combined two players. Melifonwu from Syracuse being another guy might be there. So that's going to be the tough pick, man. That's where Snyder and Carroll are going to have to make their money. That's where Carroll, being the cornerback whisperer, is going to have to tap into that cornerback mastery, that defensive back mind, and see if he really has got a guy that is a game changer. Because let's not pass this part of it away. They've not picked. I just showed you guys at the start of this thing, in the 5 years, one cornerback in the top 3 rounds in 5 years. So they would be going not only as an outlier. This would be the highest they ever picked a cornerback, even if they picked it at the top of that 3rd round, because Shaquille was at the back end of the 3rd. But it's an interesting conundrum, because it's, well, how about these are pure zone corners, size fit, the explosive athletic scores you look for, all that's a fit right now. How tantalized, Coach Carroll, are you to take that over the lineman who could be your bedrock at the center of your offensive line? It's an interesting discussion to be had on philosophy, on, well, you got a defensive-minded coach versus what's the right pick to make versus what the analytics tell you. I love those type of discussions. Kay, who's your dream first pick? My dream first pick would be Caleb Farley falling with his back injury and landing in Seattle's lap. That would be probably, and that's like not realistic maybe, but fairly reasonable. I love the thought of Creed Humphrey if we're going to be completely realistic, but you said it's a dream, so I get to dream. He would be probably the guy I would probably lock into as far as if he fell. A guy like Tevin Jenkins, if he were to fall, which he won't, he's not leaving the 1st round, but he would be interesting. I think Walker Little, if he were to happen to fall, because that thing would be, again, probably won't happen. But I have a lot of guys that'd probably be dream scenarios. Even Diami Brown would probably be a dream scenario if that guy falls in the 2nd round to where we're at, where just I think he'd be a great player in this team. And Jason, yeah, I think we can totally be a Super Bowl team, but I do think there's more work to be done here. There's more work to be done. We can't just sit and stand where we're at. We have to understand that we weren't just close to where Tampa was. We needed to come a couple rungs up. And I've referred this always to sort of like the Madden ratings, where you go to Madden and before you start the game up, they show you this overall score of what the team is. And it's on a scale of 0 to 100. And if we were a team last year, we were probably a team about an 89 to 90. And Tampa Bay was a team probably up at 94. Is their overall rating. And Packers are probably 93. Okay? So have you in an offseason with the losses versus what you've added at this moment right now pushed yourself from a 90 to a 94? Probably not quite there. So, especially when you got to consider that Tampa Bay hasn't lost anybody. Maybe they just take a step back by luck, first place schedule, all that stuff, but you got a first place schedule too. Your boy Michael, how you doing? Hello. Go Hawks, bro. My brother would be so sad if they traded Lamar. He's been a big Ravens fan since 2009. It might be tough for him on the surface, but it might be pulling off a Band-Aid there. Where you look, I love their experiment and the way they've done this with Lamar. It was exactly what I was tantalized by the prospect of doing that with Lamar when you brought him in initially, because you're going to get him in that late 20s. So he was going to be like a high first-round pick you're paying. You're paying late 20s, fifth-round option on him. But they certainly have kind of topped out with him as far as being, I think, held back a little bit by his ability to throw the football. I think that's definitely kind of held them back just to a degree. I'd offer, though, too, they haven't exactly given him a lot of playmakers out on the outside. He's got like a tight end, and his receivers are like whatever. Hollywood Brown has not impressed me as of yet. He's okay. He's okay. But we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure they're ready to trade him yet. I'd think they would wait one more year with that, one more season. Your boy Michael, you guys know ever happened to Rain City Redemption? I thought they were still doing their stuff, your boy. They're probably waiting for a good. They probably got some stuff cut up, and they're just waiting for a good new Super Bowl ending here to add another redemption to the post. To keep the series consistent. U2K says, would love a draft of more cowbell offensive line. Creed Humphreys, Aaron Banks, Robert Hainsey, Alaric Jackson, but also love Tommy Tremble, Michael Carter, Mears, Marset, Shakir Brown. Yep, I like all those guys. I have no issue whatsoever if they addressed offensive line in a big way in this draft. I think that a recipe on this draft, a way to go would be build a talented, young, very good offensive line that also happens to be cheap on those young rookie deals. And then again, fit that money then into other places. Pick and choose the lineman you want to add to a second contract, because God knows it's been seemingly 20 years since we've added a second contract on a lineman. But outside of, I know we did with Dwayne Brown, but I mean, a lineman we drafted. But yeah, I would have no problem with that, Dewey. Fish, did you watch a film of Des Fitzpatrick? I like him a lot. He is a big wide receiver. You know what? He was the one I didn't get on my list. I'm sorry, brother. I missed him, but I'm adding him on right now. Des Fitzpatrick. Sorry, thought I had him on my list. I got all the other guys that we had off the last stream, but I must have missed him. But I will catch him right before we do the draft. I'll get him put on there. The Bills Bunker. How you doing, Bunker? What's up, dude? New to the channel, supporting other football YouTubers. Just dropped us up. Thank you, Bills Bunker. I'll do the same for you after I'm off on my deal here. But appreciate you, man. Thank you for jumping in and checking out and supporting other channels. We got to stick together here. Best case scenario, and Bills Bunker says protect Russ. And that's what I'm advocating for you, brother. Just get offensive line. We're all in favor of it. And specifically the center position is what we want to target here. I get why you'd look into drafting a quarterback later in the draft, but the Hawks are contenders. Build for right now. 100%. That's my point. Don't wait. Don't get the quarterback this year. We can wait. All that stuff, let's push that down the line. If we're moving on from Russ anyway at any point in time, he's got to go. Having some quarterback waiting in the wings with this roster where it's at, you're going to reset things anyway as it is, I think. Matthias says, best case scenario for our 3 draft picks selections you see. Best case scenario, you get Creed Humphrey with the first pick. You're able to trade back to the 3rd round and still get him, getting then 4 total draft picks. In the 4th round, then you would go and select, let's say you can get, let's say you can get Marquez Stevenson out of Houston in the 4th round. 5th round pick, you get Israel Mukumu. And then with your last pick, Well, there's the question, huh? Last pick, I'm not sure on. I guess last pick, it'd be nice if you get like an Alaric Jackson fell or some lineman that fell through the draft that you're able to happen to maybe select at that point. But that would be how I'd like to see at the top. Then you get your starting center. You got a wide receiver who should be able to work into the mix on things. And you got a cornerback who will challenge as a starter and even next year, I think. Maxwell says Mac Jones to the 49ers will be the best thing for this draft. It will be hilarious. It will be hilarious, but then I started to get my breath was paused last night. Last night I was sitting in my confidence on my cloud, already just giggling every about 20 minutes, just thinking about the Niners selecting Mac Jones. And then the stories started to break about a new love affair. A love affair older than time. A coach falling for that type of player that just so damn toolsy. Ooh. And it certainly seems that our one Mr. Shanahan may have just fallen a little bit in love with Trey Lance. We don't know. There's so many rumors. Who knows what's happening here? I don't know. But this scares me. You all know my number one, number two quarterbacks go Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance. I'm not a quarterback guru. I don't wear a fancy hat. It's just what I saw in the film. It's just what I liked. And I liked me some Trey Lance, and I'll tell you this, I am scared to death now. Now I'm going to have restless nights this week. Because by God, we might see Trey Lance in the Niners, and by God, all those people telling you that he has to sit for multiple years, maybe not. Because he can run a structured 18-pass attempt game and run it well. And that's just what Shanahan would ask him to do. GoHawks05 says, Waddle on Arizona scares me. Yeah, I mean, Arizona trading up and going in a wide receiver would be a little freaky, a little bit. Again, with Waddle, though, not necessarily a guy that's going to play on the outside. Might just be a slot-only guy. So are they just going to go to all-spread concept formation at all times in Arizona at that point? Is it 3 wide receiver sets 70% of the time in order to get the most out of that first-round pick that you traded up to get? Creates a little bit of that impetus, doesn't it? Pushes you to do that a little bit more than maybe you would have normally done. Now, I know they like spread concepts there anyway, but yeah, he's going to be a good player. He's going to be a good player in this league. He's going to be a problem in this league. And it is a flashy move by Arizona to do that. I would offer there's some other things with Arizona that I would look for if I was a fan of theirs to want to see them round out. Getting another wide receiver is good, but just a few other things, another offensive lineman, maybe a cornerback in this draft. You're going to move capital to go up and get him, and you're going to remove, capital off your draft to do that. Well, haven't you already traded for your center with Rodney Hudson and give up, I think, a 3rd-round pick? So now you're going to give up your first plus a second to move up, and you essentially now get, Rodney Hudson and Waddle and don't address much else. I don't know. Seahawks, what is your draft schedule? I'm just going to be live during the whole draft, Seahawks. So I'll be on it I'll probably be on about like a half hour before draft day on Thursday, and then same for both 2 days. So by day 3, I'm going to be done. GoHawks05, Leatherwood projects to me as a guard. He could go Hawks. I'll tell you, as far as just, he's not a guy that's going to go out and blow guys off the ball and just be real. Like, he gets into bigger guys at that point, and because he doesn't always play with like that nasty fierceness you want to see out there, those guys might get him okay in there as well. He's not a guy I love a lot, to be honest with you. He's not a guy, if we drafted him, I'd kind of probably shrug. It's not that he's bad. Again, he's going to play in this league and all that, and he's got the Alabama background, but it's a little bit like James Carpenter. James Carpenter has played in this league 10 years, but has any one point in time been considered one of the best guards in the sport? I can't think of one year he was one top 5, top 10. He just happens to always have a job. The same thing here with Alex, I think. Maxwell just saw the 49ers are either picking Trey Lance or Mac Jones. They are still deciding. Yeah, it's crazy that you're still deciding at this point in the evaluation process. But supposedly what I had heard last night was that Trey Lance went and whispered into Shanahan's ear some sweet nothings. And Shanahan said, I like what you're saying. That's just what I want to hear. And it makes a lot of sense. This makes more sense to me than going for Mac Jones. You just learned with the lesson of Jimmy Garoppolo going with an just all right quarterback. Just enough guy isn't enough to get it done. Why go back and duplicate that again? Why not go a different route of it? And if you want to have a quarterback structured into only throwing a minimal amount of passes because you want to be so run-centric, look at the guy that did the 18 attempts and did it and almost threw for 40 touchdowns, I think, in that year that he did, or had 40 total touchdowns in that year that he did it. No interceptions. He knows how to play when you put him in a structure and you game plan things open for him, and Lance is dangerous. Dangerous. He by far scares me of any of the guys they could be picking there. GoHawk says Najee, 2,000-yard rusher, but he's a stud and we'll get at least 1,500 to somebody already silenced 312. It was 312 already, bro. Oh my goodness. But he's a stud and we'll get 1,500 to 1,700 all-purpose yards at his peak. Yeah, I like him, GoHawks. I feel best about both him and Javonte Williams. They're both neck and neck for me as the number one back on the board here in this draft. I sometimes lean a little bit more to Javonte Williams, but that might just be the highlight package selling me on the guy. Najee's a guy who's definitely another one of those gotten picked apart. He's a little bit like Trevor Lawrence here in this post-draft process, where there's times where I feel like he's gotten a little bit picked unfairly apart in his game, and people are like kind of forgetting what he is as a player. But I don't know if he's going to be in that 1,500 to 1,700 all-purpose place, but I think he's probably going to be the first running back taken off the board. And I think he's going to be a perennial, probably 1,000-yard rusher for the first few years of his career. And that's, if you're going to pick in the first round, you better get that. If you're going to pick a running back in the first round. Rabbitron85 says, Simi Fehehoko is a beast. He's 6'4", 225, and he ran 4.5 40. Well, I have indeed looked at my guy, Fehehoko. If I can get to him. And I liked his game. Somewhere in here, I've got him. There we go. So his 4.42 was in the 77th percentile. His 3-cone, this is the old DK Metcalf 3-cone, because when you get to the 6'4" guys, you always want to know what's their 3-cone. Because if you ever got a 6'4" guy who was truly elite with a 3-cone, oh Nelly, now you got something there. He was in about the 66th percentile with his 3-cone, 6'8", It's okay. He definitely plays really big, and he plays almost bigger than his 6'4" frame size at times. He's really good at winning contested catches. He's probably going to be able to bring that bring that skill into the NFL level. He does a really good job with his size. There's a couple of these big receivers in this draft who have learned to do this pretty well. He's very adept at that, and that is shortening his steps off the line of scrimmage to keep himself from getting pressed too bad. Someone was having me look at one of these receivers that's like a 6'6" guy in this draft, and you saw him, and he's trying to do similar things, because the second those real tall guys get pressed on the leverage, kind of inside that chuck zone, they always lose the leverage game. And it's not so much they lose the leverage game and that they're not bigger and can't go up and overcome and jump the ball, but we're talking about separation here, and they can't get up to speed at that point as the guy's just riding them up the field. And they can't dislodge them off of them, really, especially if the guy's got a good feel of where the route is. Feko does a really good job of getting those steps choppy a little bit, and so that he can deal with whatever the guy's going to come at him with, and allows him to get around those presses, get out of that leverage game that you're going to lose as a bigger wide receiver more often than not. I like that a lot about him. He really did seem to give corners pause in pressing him as well off the line of scrimmage. There's some bigger wide receivers in this draft who do not do that, and a lot of cornerbacks will attack them like that because they're not going to trust those guys to be able to burn them deep over the top if they can get off the press. He has that, as we were talking about, 4.42 speed that he did at his pro day, so he's got the speed to still challenge you deep and make you push you over the top in that realm of things. I think he will benefit a little bit from tighter calls in the NFL. College lets those cornerbacks play a little bit more, let them get a little more grabby and handsy. So I don't think he's going to be able to get away with that as much at the next level. But I think that means he's going to be a little bit better player at the next level than he was in college. Because once you get him down the football field, though they're not pressing him, the book on these big receivers then is that what you do is just kind of hold them down the field. And those umpires, the refs, just don't call it at the college level. There were some weird times that he wasn't the number 2 wide receiver on the football field at certain points, and I wondered about that. Why is he not the number 2 guy out there? It made me kind of wonder: is there issues with him blocking? Is it a lot of times taken off the field in the games that I watched of Fehoko? I don't know what now. Sanford runs a real run heavy attack. They're not throwing the ball over the football field, but all the more reason you'd think you'd want him out there when you are going to be throwing the ball. He lined up outside and in the slot. He can do both well at the next level. Again, he can catch the ball with a wide catch radius, catch it out away from his body. He's not a body catcher. That certainly is going to help and lend itself well. So he's got the speed, the short area burst, the 3-cone stuff. He doesn't have that kind of, like DK didn't really have that. That's okay. It's not that big a deal. He's got the speed. You don't need that. Can he win with the contested catches? And there's a couple of guys in that realm. Sage Sherratt's in that realm. These guys that are really good contested catchers. But it's kind of all of what they have to offer. And what they tell us is that these contested catchers are not going to be able to do this skill as well at the NFL level. That's what the analytic people tell us. That's what the scouts tend to tell us, is that it's not a skill to marvel at as much because it's taken away so much easier at the NFL because these guys have ball skills and they can jump through the gym and they can get to the ball and knock it away. So you've got to be able to get separation because of that. But I do like Simi Rabbitron, so I'd be okay with them drafting him later on, somewhere probably in the 5th, 6th, 7th round area, probably 5th or 6th. Randall says the detractors are really reaching on the Jamar Chase knock. If you recall last year, they knocked Burrow because the wide receiver he was throwing to were wide open. Yeah, it's weird how narratives change with that, Randall, isn't it? And you just go, I heard the same thing last year with Burrow. It's like, oh, he's got these monsters at wide receiver. Yeah, there were two real monsters at wide receiver. You know, Mark Terrace worked in there a little bit. It wasn't Moss, the tight end. He's in there doing his like whatever. It was Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Those were the two guys getting that wide open, and he'd throw it up for him. I think Burrow set the record last year with the just toughest throws, and because those guys were making those tough contested catches. And Jamar takes that contested catch thing that I was just talking about with Simi, and he goes to another level with it. It's not just a matter of, well, it's a skill he has. It's a skill of mastery that he has. You're not going to need to throw him 5 balls on a fade and he's going to catch 2 of them. He'll catch 4 of them. He's got an ability to just time things, his jumping ability, that freakish side, getting out of the way. Jamar is awesome to watch. Just an awesome player to watch. It's almost one guy you just don't even have to break him down. It's just turn on the film and watch him. Turn on the tape and let him go. And you're going to be like, whoa, look out here. You know? Your boy Michael, the thing with that is when they have injuries like that, it takes like a year and a half to heal fully. I think you're talking about Disley. It's your boy Michael. So Jabbai and boy Michael, I watched your reaction to Jordan Brooks and you said you were angry. You said the F word many times, but I was angry also. The thing is when they have the injuries, I think I missed a comment of yours on that, your boy Michael. Yeah, I know I responded to your comment on that. I stand by my reaction. And I'm going to do it on before the draft. I'm actually going to play these as we're leading up to the live stream. I'm going to play both of my first round draft reaction to both LJ Collier and Jordan Brooks over the last couple of years. And I stand by both of them. I called LJ Collier the minute he was drafted a bust. I was very ardent on saying he will be a bust, that he's not a very good player, is what it is. And Jordan Brooks the same way. It's not that I didn't like Jordan Brooks. It's that he was a run-stuffing linebacker. What's the value in a run-stuffing linebacker in the NFL? You know, what is that value in this modern age? It's not 1985. It ain't 1995. It ain't 2005. You know, this is 2021, where the run-stuffing middle linebacker is not a huge valuable position. You don't pick that normally in the first round. And it bore out just to how I thought it would bear out. Brooks has been a good run-stuffing linebacker, but he can't cover for a damn. For a damn. And I don't like picking that in the first round. Just like I don't like picking a run-stuffing defensive end in the first round who's not particularly good at stuffing the run. I tend to have some issues with that. And that's why I'm going to publish them again and post them, Jaboy Michaels, because I stand firmly lockstep in line with my evaluation of the last 2 years on both of those two guys. Not that I don't like Jordan Brooks, and I swore a lot last year because it was like, dude, this is not the way to go here, but what are you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? Rabbitron says, I think we trade back and end up with at least 5 picks. I could see us doing that, Rabbitron. It's hard to see them just coming away with just 3 or maybe even just 4 picks. It's not Schneider's MO. It's a guy that likes to collect 10, 11, 12 picks if he can in a draft. So it would make sense if they found a way to do it. I wouldn't be surprised in the least if they did it too. Randall says, I'd be on board with Sam Ellinger, round 6. I think we can develop into a viable backup and maybe some position versatility. Maybe there. I mean, if you got those extra 4 or 5 picks, I'm on board with it. If we're down to just 3 or 4 picks, I'd prefer to probably go somewhere else because I think the value in the 6th round there is you probably get a better receiver who can give you some snaps. You might find a cornerback in that area, Randall, who could potentially end up being a starter for you down the line. First, getting Ellinger, who just not really going to have a long-term future as a quarterback of the future for you, and you're really just drafting to be a backup. And again, my theory on that, Randall, is just back to the fact the new CBA now allows for the veterans to come at such a more minimal account. They cost so much less than they used to cost. Sorry. Something was hanging down there. They cost so much more than they used to cost, and they don't cost what the backups don't cost what they used to cost versus what you used to have as savings in picking the quarterback at that realm. There's really not a huge difference anymore between that, like there used to be under the old CBA. Thanks, D Nugget. Good to be back. Yarl, I bet you our Week 18 game is going to be at Los Angeles Rams. The NFL probably wants the Rams to have home field for a Super Bowl run. Maybe so. It may turn out to be just that. Oh, your boy Michael, thank you for reminding me. You please drop a like and sub. If you happen not to be subbed to this channel, I think I got like 92% or something of people who watch for this channel are not subbed. Come on and sub. Come on aboard. We're on the road to 5,000. Let's be real. I'm continually disappointed and confused following Seahawks drafts and don't think I'm alone, particularly the early rounds. Nope, I don't think you're alone on that at all. This was part of the reason that I was on board with the Jamal Adams trade this offseason, or started this offseason, despite the fact it was obviously they're making it from a panic mode, despite the fact that it was obvious it was probably going to be a little bit of an overpayment for his services. Because over the last few years, that first pick, whether you want to call it being pessimistic or not doing good enough in your scouting evaluation or whatever the reason may be, that first pick of the draft has been horrific over the last 5 and 6 years. And Seattle kind of recognized it. And I think that's part of the willingness to trade out of that. I would like to see them better at it, Yui. I'd like them not to have to trade out of it. But if it's trade out of it and get a known good quantity player versus continually trying to swing at something that they're obviously not good at, I'll go the other route. I sure would like to see them do it better. And part of it, I think, again, is that they get trapped in a couple different things that cause it. Number one, picking for need. Number two, not understanding positional value and taking a running back in the first round, taking a run-stuffing middle linebacker in the first round. This is not the positional value of the modern NFL. There's other positions that are more valuable that you should be leaning towards more often in those situations. Your boy Michael, we really need to get a couple of drafts like 2010 through the 13. There's a lot of people who feel like we did as good as we did in those drafts, your boy Michael, because Coach Carroll had gone out there and scouted all these guys nationwide and had a kind of intricate knowledge of not just the player, but the family background and all that, and that perhaps that helped him get a leg up on some of these guys he picked. I don't know if that's the truth or not. It very well could. There certainly has been a far fall-off drafting process after that point from 2014 onward, where it has not looked as good. I think last year was finally at least a step in the direction. Did they kill it? Did they knock it out the park? No. But was it a solid probably B draft in retrospect? Yeah, probably. That's probably where that draft will probably fall at. And that's knowing and understanding that, at least in my evaluation, you go to your 2019, 2018, you're in D, C minus realm, best case scenario at times. So they are at least coming forward a little bit, but they need to get better, man. Rabbitron, Brooks turned out for us though. Okay, so Rabbitron, this is again, I think just real, let me get the Brooks thing in this part where I want to show the video that I did. Brooks can stop the run. Stopping the run is a good skill to have as a linebacker, but the NFL is more and more modernizing into a passing attack. I was just talking about the Cardinals going to 3 wide receiver sets all the time. 60, 70, 80% of the time perhaps, if they're going to go out there and get a guy like Waddle. So while it's good to have run stuffing, more and more teams are running the ball less and less and less and less. So it's not as inherently as a valuable skill as it once was. And my problem with Brooks being drafted at the time was it's like a pick for 1985 rather than for 2020. And so the bare numbers match this out. My eye test, I saw him multiple times get burned, especially in zone coverage. Last year in college, I think he had about 70 dropbacks in coverage approximately. Might have even been more than that. He had no pass breakups, no passes defended, none of it. And you watched him in college in middle linebacker in that last year, and he was playing zone. So he's doing a lot of what he would do in Seattle's scheme, which is they ask their linebackers to predominantly play zone. So he struggles in college in zone, gets here, good run stuffing linebacker, a thumper. What's the value in that? Arrives here last year. Yes, he gets some tackles, but you cannot get caught up in tackles as far as the measurement of a player. How was he in coverage? God awful. Ranked 93 out of 98 outside linebackers in the NFL last year. That's not good. He was taken off the field, out of the will linebacker, taken off the field in nickel and dime situation, or in just nickel situations, because obviously the will comes off the field and dime. But in nickel situations, he at his will linebacker role came off the field so KJ Wright could move from the Sam to Will and play the coverage better than he could. He is so much faster than KJ, but they put KJ there instead because they didn't trust him in zone coverage. This is the problem I had with the pick then. This is the problem I have with the pick now. It's not good to be drafting a linebacker who's going to fail at coverage because the modern NFL, that's going to be put on display on a weekly basis. And they tried to cover it up for him a little bit last year, and even trying to do that, he still ranked poorly. So we'll see if I'm proven wrong on this long term, but I don't think I will be. Michael, do you trust the draft opinions of any mainstream media types? Or are they mostly pretenders? Your draft analysis is top. Who the hell is Mel Kiper? Laughing out loud. I think all of them have little bits and pieces that they can kind of offer in, and you'll have to sort of distill it a little, Michael. You do have to distill it a little bit. You can even take a little bit from a guy like Kiper, because there's these guys that, no matter whether or not their brain works in a way that makes a lot of sense for where they have guys picked and drafted or where they rate a guy, they'll have inside sources. They'll have people that they're talking to. You get like a Peter Schrager guy who gets his draft picks right every year, and he's not a scout film guy. He just has inside connections. So you look at who he's picking and go, oh, okay, and you can almost take a little bit of your list off that and then move it around thusly. I think Pro Football Focus does a really good job by balancing the tape study and the measurement of the rating of these guys and what you see with it. I think that they get multiple eyes on that stuff. They get to a kind of more of consensus point of view because it's not just one person looking at one guy, it's multiple guys looking at one guy. I think that gets you a lot better snapshot of the situation. But even a guy like Daniel Jeremiah, as a former scout, can give you a perspective as you see him and what he's going on. It doesn't mean he's going to be right. It's kind of, that's how my mind works with it, is I just try to distill. Stuff hits with me right where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then other stuff hits with me like, that doesn't, there's no part of that should turn out that way. But it'll be interesting. I'm going to do a mock draft this week too, a final last one right before, just to see how accurate I can get my deal. But those are kind of the people I sort of look at, but not Kiper, that's for sure. GoHawk says your Mukamua breakdown was great. Oh, thanks, GoHawk. I know it's a little longer form and kind of, it's not, I'm going to try to get him maybe cut a little typer, but I want to kind of do him long form as just sort of a, full long breakdown with him. And he really does get me excited, man. He was one of those guys that I really liked what I saw with him. He's not a perfect prospect, but that's why you get him in the fifth, sixth round maybe, but what he offers and what he is, and man, he's got some interesting traits. Rabbitron, do we need to draft a cornerback? Could we get by or even excel with our cornerback depth squad? Yeah, you could, Rabbitron. You could probably get by with what you got right now. I mean, it's more right now than what you had all of last year, and you got by with what you had last year. If you look at it, your slot situation is taken care of. You're too deep there. Your outside corner, you've got Trey Flowers as your depth guy, Witherspoon, DJ Reed as your frontline starters, and then you've got Demarius Randall and Pierre Desir as your backups. You could roll with that. Obviously, you'd like it to be a little more talented. I think that's the thing I would point to, is it's good from a depth standpoint, but do we have the frontline talent there? What if DJ Reed goes down and you're putting Demarius Randall out there, or Pierre Desir, or Trey Flowers? Do we want to look at maybe getting a guy who might be a little bit of an upgrade over those offerings? Especially if you can get Rabbitron a little bit of leverage up against Trey Flowers, who's sitting at right now $2.1 million as far as his cap hit goes. And if you go draft a corner in the draft and you think he's as good as Trey Flowers, you flip out Trey and you're paying now $400,000 to a rookie as opposed to the $2.1 million he's on the hook for next year. Say nothing of maybe potentially trading him at that point. Jarl says, I want us to take Puka Williams with the late round pick. I liked Puka. Wasn't blown away by him, Jarls, but that's good. He's a guy that's liked by a lot of people out there. As far as I know, a lot of NFL teams are interested in him. He's a fun player, but just didn't blow me over necessarily. But hey, like you said, late round pick, man. You know my recipe with that, Jarl, is pick a late round running back every year if you can. If you can do that every single year, and you'll land on your Chris Carsons and your Thomas Rawls once every couple of years. But that because you're drafting them every year, you don't have to pick them every year and land on them every year. You can afford to have one of them get by for 3 years until they get onto that free agent contract, and then you got the next one coming in, chambered up, ready to go. UE2K, Seahawks should stop using a shotgun approach to the draft and try having more sniper-like precision. Need 3 starters from the draft or UD undrafted free agents. Agreed, man. I would much rather like to see them at times targeted on specific guys that are true fits for what they do and what they want, as opposed to putting everybody in a big bucket and saying, okay, if we just get out of this bucket, one of these guys will be fine, which has more been, I think, the approach. He said Big Ben over Russ. Somebody banned him for saying Big Ben over Russ. Well, I mean, hey, Max, if we get an average center, we then wouldn't have a weakness on the team. Doesn't mean all positions are great, just means none are bad. I agree, Max. It's kind of like right now you'd be able to bring it to an average place as far as center, and that's the one place right now I think Posick has potential to get to league average, maybe a little bit better than league average. He played his first full season at center this last year, and he did all right with it. Ran out of gas as the year went on, maybe fighting through some injury stuff. But having a center there then that you could put in place, keeping it as a position now that goes from being a little bit below league average to a little above league average maybe, or league average. That's just that little bit of increase that I think is so important. If you're talking about adding both Creed Humphrey and Gabe Jackson, by the way, you're talking about now taking a position where the pass blocking was not great on either of those two positions last year and monumentally improving both. Now you've got an answer for an Aaron Donald type. If we go the tight end route in the draft, Tremble could be both plus a fullback. Nick Eubanks would also be a good inline option, and he'll be available in the late rounds. I'd love Tommy Tremble would be, if I was doing a top 10 list of guys I'd love to come out of this draft with. Tommy Tremble would probably be in the back end of that top 10, but he might be on my top 10 list. If almost just because it would get us back to maybe re-embracing a little bit of the fullback role. I don't think they're going to do it, but I'd love to see it. Tremble's a fun prospect to watch. You rarely see guys that can play both of those two positions. You can see guys that play both the two positions, but it's always a tight end at the fullback who looks super big and awkward trying to get leverage versus a guy like him who can do both really well. I really like Tremble. Superdog 1038, which receiver do we draft? Just any one? Well, I've been saying Marquise Stevenson. One of a couple guys probably for me. You got Marquise Stevenson, Irmir Marset is a guy that's probably on there for me. I think Palmer's an option from Tennessee because just the kind of guy that not because I like him, but just kind of the kind of guy Seattle would gravitate towards, I think. Probably in that realm. Maybe Tylan Wallace, another guy would be out there. UE2K, dream pick would be Javonte Williams. Yeah, did you see that there was a gif of his running out from last season, just running people over? I got so hyped watching it. I was like, I would love Javonte Williams. I don't know if it'd be fully on dream because it's not exactly a need, but I would be pretty happy. 312 says, no disrespect, but the top 5 contenders right now are the Packers, Bucks, Chiefs, and Steelers because they all have top 5 quarterbacks and top 3 head coaches. Yeah, 312, you're married to that fact that you're not buying the Roethlisberger. The offensive line's not there. The parts of your team that are still problem last year are still problem right now. You haven't solved them this offseason. So, I don't know, man. I don't know about that one. Go Hawks 05, bro. I started a 2010 Seahawks rebuild on Madden. Legion of Boom secondary plus Darrelle Revis. Going to draft Russ to put us over the top in the 2012 draft. Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. Revis would have been pretty sick. He is more of a man-on-man guy. He might not have been as great in the zone stuff, but he's so good he probably could have made it work. Either way. Rabbitron, all 4 teams have a top 3 head coach. Don't start bringing logic into it, Rabbitron. Oh. Your boy Michael, Rain City hasn't posted in over a year. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I can attest to this. The football documentary stuff is a little bit of a not thankless thing, but it's a little bit of a, people like to watch it, but it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's not as viewed up as you want or whatnot, or maybe they're just putting new stuff together. I know they take their time on stuff. So Rabbitron says Steelers are going 3-14. I think they're not in that division, man. Cleveland, the way that they've stacked up, Baltimore where they're looking. Even Cincinnati's kind of on the uptick a little bit. Easily could end up in a situation where you're 9-8 or something like that. Three and two. No, I don't think Seattle will get necessarily rid of Russ in the future. I just think that if you were to make a pick, if you picked a quarterback of that second round pick, then that's an indication that that is what you're looking to do. That would be mine. Max says, did you see the news? The Niners are deciding between Lance and Mac. Yeah, I probably going to. And it's. You want to talk about two opposite ends, Rabbitron, of my freak out versus laughing maniacally like the Joker and Batman. I laugh maniacally like the Joker and Batman if they select Mac Jones. I am crying in my own tears into a puddle of tears with Trey Lance is selected because that's a legitimately scary option for the Niners to pick up. Whereas Mac Jones is a clown shoes. Rabbitron says that means they'll pick Fields. But yeah, who knows, man? It's been a wild swing with this one, Max, on the back and forth. Who will it be with the Niners? Odd they're taking right up until the end point to decide too. Ethan's Tech World. I knock on wood that with a very limited number of picks, John and Pete can really zone in on the best players that they can get, as opposed to having loads of picks just to have them, because the pressure is on. You're damn right. And they've been feeling this pressure this offseason. That's why John Snyder's left his comfort zone. And Coach Carroll's got to be feeling it. Man's going to be 71 years old. How many more years do you have, Pete? How many more years? Collecting picks has not worked. 2017, all those third rounders, the end of the fourth round, Mario Darbo, Nas Jones. People will tell us that draft is successful because out of 11 or 12 picks, you came out of it with Shaquille Griffith and Chris Carson. That wasn't a successful draft. That wasn't the proper way to go about that. You got cute. You got cute every step of the way through it. And you didn't get any real impact players from it. You got a couple of guys. Carson's great. Carson's fine. When you're saying, well, we got a running back, that's the jewel of our draft class. This running back in the 7th round, we got the jewel of our draft class. You're probably not doing a very good job in the draft at that point. But, yep, we'll see on this. The pressure is on, Ethan. Great point. Yui thought about getting USC Talolona Hufanga with our 7th round as an undrafted free agent and moving him to Sam. Best defensive player on the Trojans, but has an ugly injury history. Risky, but he's worth a look anyway. That's right where I'd want to make that pick in that point. Yeah, I like the UDFA. Maybe you can get to a little bit of a connection between Yui with Carroll's history at USC and seeing if you can get a pipeline to him. Haven't watched a little of him, watched just a tiny bit, but I'll take another look at him. I'd be maybe okay with it. Boy, can he set the edge, though, coming from safety. From safety to Sam linebacker, can he get up on a tight end and set that edge? That'd be the one thing I'd wonder about making that kind of transition. I'd probably feel happiest about making that risk if it is a UDFA. Undrafted free agent, of course. Ethan, continuing, of course, there are specific positions of need to improve, but I really hope they feel the pressure to nail this draft, as they have done a great job in free agency and they are not done. Agree 100% with you. I mean, there's no place that I can pick anything apart on that and say, yes, absolutely. This is the key on this too is that no matter whether you're picking in that second point or early third or fourth or the 5th, 6th, 7th place, there are places that you could attack to get that kind of value that you're speaking of. You could get I've mentioned, you get a good cornerback in the 6th, 7th round in this draft. Maybe a guy who can actually push to be a starter. A guy that's over what you had in Trey Flowers in a 6th round a couple years ago. An actual, legitimate starter type out the gate. Not a guy you're converting from one position to another and trying to make it work, but actually a Cameron Bynum, from Cal, for instance. You get a guy like that. He's available. So they can attack it that way, Ethan, if they do it that way. We'll see if they go for more of these, he's got upside, he's this, if he can do this just well, or they go for more of the, we know what we're getting, he's going to do this. 312 says Fields is the most overrated quarterback in this draft. I guess I'd tend to agree with you. I mean, I've got him ahead of Mac Jones, but then I also have him behind every one of the other guys. So, I mean, I don't know. He's a hard guy to get a read on. I think that's been the thing that's hit him a little bit. Ethan says, I've still mostly heard talk about Jones and Fields to San Fran, but if Trey Lance were to go to San Fran, I'd feel knots in my stomach. He has so much upside, far more than others. Same. I feel the same way, Ethan. Same place. I early on in the process, he was the guys I was looking at quarterbacks. It's been more of a struggle for me to wrap my head around Wilson than it should have been, but it has been. Same thing's true for me with Fields. Same thing's true for me with Mac Jones is fine to me, but he's like a late first round pick guy. His top end is Kirk Cousins minus the deep ball and maybe a little bit better decision making on shorter intermediate routes. Maybe that remains to be seen. But Lance was the guy that just, to me, had a lot of wow factor. I know there wasn't a lot of tape with him. All that I had the one game this year before they closed down shop there. But all that being said, he's got a guy with his beautiful deep ball. He played within structure in that 1 year. Very few attempts, but he was able to make the most of those attempts that he was given. And this is what will, I'm sure, gravitate Mike Shanahan over to Mike Shanahan over to him. I think I just called him his dad, maybe. Seahawks, do you have any worry that Darrell Taylor never plays a snap in the NFL? No, Seahawks, I'd only have that worry if we hadn't seen him out there actually practicing at the end of the year. I think if the Seahawks had won their playoff game and there was going to be another playoff game, I think the intention was that they were going to get him some snaps on the field. The coaching staff is very high on this guy. If they had shut him down that way, I'd be worried. They didn't shut him down that way, though. So I think you're going to see him play. You're going to see him do pretty good out the gate because the skill set that he brought, if he is healthy, if he feels good, and he's had a long time to train and get right and get himself to his utmost, if he is that guy that he flashed in college, he's a guy who has quick first step off the snap to bend, quickness to bend, quickness to bend. He pairs those two skills really well. That creates quick pressure. Quick pressure is what can create sacks and pressures, even early on in a player's career when they're learning to be a pass rusher. They're learning all the moves, learning how to hand fight, understanding the leverage game. That stuff will allow him to just kind of burst onto the scene a little bit. Not star potential burst on the scene, but burst on the scene with some production. 312, what NFL franchise do you think is the most successful overall all time? Give me your top 5 in order. Oh my goodness. Green Bay Packers are the number 1. Probably go 49ers behind that. And then maybe like a tie between the Steelers and the Cowboys. And then the 5th, I don't know. I'd pick on the 5th. I have to probably think about that. I'd have to think on the 5th. Patriots, I guess. Patriots might be in there in the 5th. It's off the top of my head. And no, Antonio Brown, LeVavion Bell are not GOATs. It's called that's greatest of all time. No, there can't be, yeah. Ethan, there will be a couple of players that drop where Seattle is in the second round. There is always. The question is, will John and Pete jump on it and be able to justify not having more picks? I hope so. Yeah, the two guys that kind of just jump on, I mean, there's going to be other guys I'm not thinking of, Ethan, but the two guys are, for me, I think Caleb Farley will go at the end of the first round. That's as far as his drop, I think, will be sustained. But there's always a chance that those guys in the injury history, they can fall further. I think he would be maybe there's an outside chance he has a potential of winding up and being around there. The other guy is Terrace Marshall, a guy a lot of people have projected as a late first-round pick who, with this injury history as well, could fall down and is a position of need, 6'3". I think he had a very good pro day, would fit what they're looking for. He didn't have the Rashad Bateman pro day where suddenly he is they dried him out on the line and he suddenly lost 2 inches of height. He actually was a legitimate 6'3". So that being the case, that would be it's an interesting conundrum, Ethan, if you got Terrace there and you got a Creed Humphrey or more of a position of need. And that will tell us a lot about whether or not they've adjusted their draft philosophy in that respect. Matthias 23451, toughest game you see us playing this year. I'm going to say the Packers game. They seem to give us the toughest matchup outside of our division, of course. We've got to go into Lambeau Field. That's the one that was like last year's game against Buffalo that I said in the offseason, man, that's probably a loss. It's probably, you can go, well, what if it's in winter? Maybe, well, let's wait to see if it's in winter. I'm going to say, it's going to be a tough game on the road, and it's probably one that you're probably not going to come away with there. But that'd be the number one for me. Your boy Michael, I still definitely believe that LJ won't be much but a backup who is just there because he was a first-round pick, and that's it. If he proves me wrong, great. Well, one thing I give Seattle credit with the moves they've made, at least functionally with the Aldon Smith move especially, is that it puts both, in my opinion, Rasheem Green and LJ Collier on the prove it block. Both of those two guys have gotten to basically lean back on the fact that they're developmental players, and so when they have injuries or when they don't come along exactly, they can still be kept in kind of the rotation and given their time to kind of slowly bloom. But we've not seen the bloom. Both of those flowers are still closed up bulbous-wise, and they're not getting anywhere, and so maybe Seattle's sort of accepting that fact that maybe this time we're going to have to move on from both these guys potentially. I know with Rasheem, you save $1 million this year off your salary cap by letting him go. I don't know what the cost is right now with LJ. I think it's pretty much a flat line versus the dead money you take. But I agree with you. I will stand right by my assessment of the time he was drafted. You pick a guy in the first round, you're picking a guy to be at least a starter in this league. You're picking him to be at least okay. You give me average league level of play out there on the football field. And there is no metric over the first 2 years of his career where LJ Collier has been anywhere close, either as a pass rusher or as a run stuffer, to league average. So, just a bad pick there. Ethan's Tech Word, all right. How was your move? You were in Hawaii, right? Yes. I do not want to move anymore after this, I'll tell you that. I am done moving. I am over it. It was a good move. Got my cats back to mainland, got everything set, so it was nice. Nothing broken, nothing out of line. I got one computer I got to get a new monitor for here, but other than that, we're good. We're rolling along, so yeah. Jace, was that a little bit of a six-pack I saw in Brandon? I don't know about that. maybe a 12-pack. If it is, it's only just lack of eating because I've been traveling. Your boy Michael, I stand by this. You never draft a running back in the first round. I would lean in that same realm of things, your boy Michael. Again and again, I always go back to that you can build an offensive line that can block for any running back. Any running backs, you can have your front line guy get injured, and second guy comes in, and he can be really good too. And once you put your horses and you instead go all clipping up onto a running back and then at the detriment of your offensive line, go one less pick on your offensive line, well, then you're more wholly reliant on that one guy to get it to carry the whole water. And I just don't know that their impact, and this is what the analytics tell us, that the impact of that first round running back, how much he's truly different, how much truly different he is as a player versus the other guys taken in the third, fourth, fifth round. It's not that wide of a gap. It's not as wide of a gap as some fans would necessarily believe. Go Hawks 05 for my 2010 rebuild. I got Jordan, Sherman. Oh, Cameron Jordan, sorry. Rodney Hudson, KJ, and Marcus Cannon. Good. Solid. Go Hawks. You have a good little line going on there. You have a decent little line. 312, why wouldn't you draft a running back in the first round? Ravens took Lamar in the first round a few years ago, and it worked out for them so far. 312, you're just saying that because you know your Steelers are going to take a running back in this first round. You're getting out ahead of that criticism. I know it. Your boy Michael says, I watched the Brooks video. You said that you wish this team could just do things normal in the draft, and I agree. I wish they didn't have to reach for everyone, and we can have someone better. It's just it. I think they get super confident in them being super smart about this, and that it's almost like they drive to go against consensus. They drive to be, we're so wild, we're so outside the box. Look at how wild we are. Look at the guy we're going to go get. And I think that I understand you're trying to sort of zig when everybody else is zagging, but I also feel like I think that it gets a little bit times where it's like that Jordan Brooks pick last year. What is that? What is that? You're his best position's middle linebacker, and he's a run stuffing linebacker at that. So not only did you draft a run stuffing linebacker, but you're going to wait 2 years to put him into his proper position. At which point you're just about on the precipice of having to then sign him to a new contract. That's where I guess. 312, Minka is better than Jamal Adams. Well, they play two different positions, so very tough to quantify between a free safety and a strong safety because they're asked to do two different things. Minka is going to be put into far more situations where he's going to intercept passes, where Jamal is going to be in far more situations where he's going to be asked to do more in run stuffing. He's going to be asked to do more as far as a pass rusher. So kind of tough to necessarily figure out which is which on that. I will say this, 312. Jamal's going to get paid before Minka. Kind of odd that your Steelers is yet to give Minka that contract. He's waiting to get paid. Why haven't you paid him yet if he's so amazing? We're negotiating right now with Jamal. We're just waiting until the end of the draft. Brian, subscribe, smash that like button, please. Oh, thank you, Brian, for mentioning that. I know we do a lot here. Just like to take advantage as much as we can on you. Just if you can hit that like button, subscribe. It does help me grow, helps me show up on all those people looking for Seahawk channels out there. Josh Doucette, how you doing, Josh? Do you think we'll draft a running back? If we do draft a running back, Josh, I would think that we would probably wait till later on in the draft. I will say this, if Javonte Williams falls down to us at 53 and Coach Carroll's looking at Javonte Williams, there's a part of me that there's that meme of Wolverine in bed at night looking at like a tablet and it's a picture and people put pictures on it as a meme. I picture Coach Carroll like that in his bed at night looking at his little tablet of Javonte Williams. This guy is everything he wants in a running back and more. I feel like he would marry this guy if he could. That would be hard for him to pass early on if that guy's sitting there when we're picking, I think. But outside of that, probably later on, probably other guys in the draft later on that they would probably gravitate towards the running back talent's kind of similar past a couple of those top-end guys. Once you get past, of course, the top three, the ETN, Javonte Williams, and Najee Harris, once you get past those guys and then you get to the next level, there's only a couple of those guys, and then you get a pretty fall-off at that point. So probably in that 5th, 6th, 7th round range if they do, but probably also not necessarily likely. I'll put the one caveat, Josh, they are going to maybe look for a third down back. That's why there was that interest a couple of weeks ago in the running back out of Cincinnati, was that I think they are looking to target more of a third down specialist type back, and that could be one that they do draft. That's what they were trying to draft last year in DJ Dallas, and probably what they were trying to draft in Travis Homer the year before. Those guys just haven't been good enough. Y2KH, I'm excited to see what cornerback we draft. Have Cody play in the base, move Brooks to Sam. Really don't want Cody playing Sam. I don't know if you're going to want Jordan Brooks over at the Sam any more than you're going to want Cody at the Sam. I agree with you. I don't want Cody there either, and Cody's best position is going to be the will. Problem being is I don't even know if he's very good as a will either. You're going to have, I think, the same issue with Cody Barton trying to be over the Sam linebacker that you would by putting Jordan Brooks over at the Sam. They can't set the edge. That's the number one skill for the Sam linebacker that you need, and that's one of the reasons that KJ made the transition last year so fluidly to the Sam after playing his whole career at the will, because at that point he could utilize his big, long build. He could get his big, long arms up on those tight ends, and it's that whole thing I always talk about when you get a guy going mano-a-mano against another guy and he's got longer arms. This is why the NFL weighs and weights those arm length values in so heavily, because you can get your arms locked up and push a guy back, and his little fingertips are just tickling your chest because he can't reach you. You've got him locked out. And when you're setting the edge, nothing helps to set the edge better than to be able to lock a guy out like that and then just totally control him. You push the running back into side. That's normally what the Sam's going to do, is to get him back into the middle of the defensive line. But then you can throw the guy away at any time and go after him if you got that length. Jordan doesn't have that. He's this, sub 6 foot guy. He's going to have a little bit of a hard time pulling that off, I would think. 312, where do you think O.J. Simpson ranks all-time as a talent, and where do you think he ranks all-time in general? Probably an all-time 10 back, probably ranks some in the top 10 somewhere all-time. Do I put him in top 5? No, and not for any of the off-the-field stuff, but we had Chuck Knox here as a coach. I believe Chuck Knox was his coach for many years in Buffalo, and I think Chuck Knox does a lot with his running game and the way that he designed things in his running game, which was very diverse, to help those running backs out, even an offense that could be very one-dimensional as O.J. ran it. And I know he was a guy with not a lot of talent around him, and that certainly has to be taken into account. But I put a myriad of other guys probably ahead of him. He's probably in that top 10 phase, right around where Emmett is, the back of that top 10. But I don't have Emmett as a top 5 back either. So, 312, and then I'm talking about a running back talent all time as a running back. Yeah, I know what you meant on that. Yeah, so talent-wise, he's talent-wise, he's probably a top. He's probably, I think he's top 10. I think he got out of his talent what he is all time. I think he's a top 10 all time running back talent, and he's probably right about 10th all time where he lands, on the list. So it's kind of both of the same, are kind of the same answer. Josh Doucette, Rondale Moore. Josh, he's a marvelous player to watch. A couple knocks with him. Played like cumulatively in 3 years, 15 games. He has horrible quarterback play at Purdue, so you can't tell if he can run routes down the football field because they did everything gadgety with him on bubble screens and simple little crossing routes. Just get the ball in his hands and let him work. Now he did that very well, but he also played his best football in his freshman year. There's just so many questions with the guy from that respect. Injuries. Not a lot of production. Can he run on the outside? How much credit do you give him for not having a quarterback who could throw him the football? And then the 5'7" thing. Not a lot of wide receivers in the NFL history that have been able to flourish at 5'7". He makes the cheetah look big. Okay? He makes him look tall. I like the guy, but I'm reticent to wonder if really at 5'7" it's going to be able to get it done. Much like with Tutu Atwell, I wonder if at 150 pounds you can get it done in the NFL with the ball in your hands. I just don't see a lot of recent history of that, and I don't like to place my bets on the outliers and the anomalies. Go Hawks says, also I made the Marshawn trade trying to build a better version of the 2013 team. Most of the same core players. Nice. What did Marshawn cost you as a trade, Go Hawks, in the game? How realistic was it? We gave up 2 4th-rounders, I think, for Marshawn before. Y2KJ 312. This deal. Sorry, you responded through. Oh, JPM, thank you for JPM. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you, my guy or girl. I don't know, JPM, maybe a man, maybe a girl, but I appreciate you subscribing. Ethan Steckworld, I know Creed Humphrey and Landon Dickerson are popular amongst the discussions, but in your eyes, how good would they be specifically in Waldron's offense, not just standing still and blocking? Well, Ethan, I won't lie to you. Dickerson, if he's healthy with his legs functional and not tearing ACLs, he's going to be more of the athletic guy, which is going to be more of a fit for what most likely Waldron's going to want in his offense, which is more of a mobile offensive lineman. With a guy like Creed Humphrey, mobility is not his number one thing. His number one thing is strength and power, his ability to anchor in pass protection. That's what gravitates me towards him, and being that with Gabe Jackson and him, you'd have just a wall there in pass protection. You'd have 2 guys that could create passing lanes for Russell Wilson in the short passing attack. This would come to pick him a little bit at the cost of doing some of the mobility stuff. You're not going to have him snap the ball and then pull out in space. He can get to the second level. He's a very smart blocker, so even though he doesn't have the athleticism you'd normally look for, he's so smart and understands what he's doing out there so well that he can make it happen with just his technique, in my opinion. That's why I think he gets above and beyond that. But if I'm going to be honest on just, pure the model of offensive lineman type they would look for and what they would want there, yeah, probably more of a Dickerson as far as physical makeup goes, and specifically just movement ability than necessarily where Creed is. Ravim, how you doing, Ravim? Good to see you on in here. Oh my God, the NFL app just sent out a notification that the Niners narrowed down their options to Lance or Jones. I know, man. I know. That thing that turned bad quick, didn't it? I'm over here never celebrate too early. I should have just nodded with the Mac Jones rumors. I laughed and was enjoying myself, and I should have just let the universe play it out before I totally went in on that. I know better than that, and now I'm getting burned because now they're double backing around to the guy that I really like. This division, no one makes any mistakes, man. This division is just like the first person to blink, you lose. Everybody's just right on edge, on point. You keep looking for the bad moves that a team makes. Oh, J.J. Watt. Oh, Stafford for Goff. God, bless it. Come on. It's frustrating. 312, who do I think the GOAT is and why in all 3 American sports? I got Jordan in basketball. In baseball, probably, I don't know in baseball. Baseball is a harder one, much tougher one with all the history on that. So I don't know. Not sure on that one. But I think Tom Brady's probably the GOAT in football. Hard to say, or not to give it to him at this point. I'd have to think on baseball. I mean, Babe Ruth is probably still number one if you factor in what he did also pitching the ball. Like, he was a great pitcher too. I have to think about it, though. Y2K, yep, I moved. I'm now back in Spokane. 3-2 Niners narrowed their options. They're taking either Lance or Jones, so UC Hawks fans will either be very pleased with their selection or utterly disappointed. So it'll be a typical draft for us, 3-1-2. It's pretty much, there is no middle ground with us as Seahawks fans on draft day. It's going to be amazing or it's going to be horrendous. So we're making our peace with it right now. Jim Jobs says, O.J. Simpson's my idol. I want to repeat his every action. Bashim, can you go through the schedule and what you think about it? Yeah. Let me see here. So let's see here. Let's look at our opponents. So the main thing that I notice with our schedule and the thing that jumps out above all else when I look at it is that the home schedule is, in a word, awesome. It's awesome. Let's take away really quickly. We know we got to play the Cardinals, the Rams, and the 49ers at home, so let's throw those out. But you look at it from there. You get the Bears. Haven't solved their quarterback issue. They're probably going to draft Mond. You could easily be looking at Foles, or who else did they trade for there? Bridgewater? I can't even tell who their quarterback. They don't care who their quarterback is. You got the Lions biting kneecaps coming in here. You got the Jaguars coming in with Trevor Lawrence in his rookie year. You got the Titans, who have sustained some free agent losses this offseason. The Lions got a little bit worse. They've tried to finally fix the pass rush, but it's not the same team that it's been in over the last couple of years. I think they've taken a step back, saying nothing on the fact that is Henry going to be able to put another season together after all those carries over the last couple of years, after already getting his contract. And then you've got the Saints coming in without any Drew Brees, and they having sustained their share of free agent losses. That to me is a home schedule. You take out the divisional opponents. That's a home schedule. You can win all of those games are very winnable. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 easily winnable games in there, in my opinion. Yeah, Titans, Jaguars coming all the way from the East Coast. Love it. And then the away opponents, Packers is going to be the one that I look as the tough one, of course, going away. Vikings, certainly they're a solid team, it seems like, but they have another team that has lost some free agents there this offseason. They're not as strong, and frankly, they're kind of like the Saints a little bit, and now that they're getting old, it's sort of like they shot their shot, and now that team's getting a little bit up there. You're seeing them start to kind of move on. Texans, or any of us, heck, there may not be even Deshaun Watson in that game. He may be suspended at that point, and we're taking on the backup with that just horrible roster. You got the Colts. Okay, that'll be tough, depending on, of course, where their quarterback is that they took, from Philadelphia there, Wentz. The Washington football team will be tough. That's a hard one. And not even offer the Steelers game on the road's a tough one. But if you look at the tough opponents on the schedule, the ones you just first glance go, okay, that's a tough opponent. That'll be a tough game. You've got Washington football team, Packers, Steelers, 3 games outside of of any of the other that you really look at. And this is, again, I'm separating it from the division because that's just is what it is. That's there every single year. But that's a pretty good turn. That's a pretty good pull. We did okay. We did fine with that schedule. Like that's not an uphill climb like 2 years ago when we got in the playoffs and we're playing the Packers. I mean, that schedule was brutal. Brutal. You were playing some real tough teams throughout that course of that whole year. Not that way this season. UE2K, imagine the Seahawks team with Jonathan Taylor. You're going to try to make me cry again, UE. You made me cry. I wanted Jonathan Taylor. UE2K says also wrong thinking on the running back in the first round. Better running backs are just better and can carry a team. They offer the best value in the end of the first round, just never a second contract for one. My theory on this goes that when you draft one, the theory always goes U2K that you get the 5 years out of them, and that they're essentially going to be able to you get cheap production out of a very good running back for 5 years. The problem with this is that after year 3, they can seek renegotiation by the CBA, and most running backs will. As we saw with a guy like Dalvin Cook, or we saw a guy like Christian McCaffrey. So that takes you from 5 cheap years to 3 cheap years. And so is that running back that much of a difference maker for that 3 years versus the other running backs? What the numbers basically tell us in general is that no, it's not that big of a difference maker versus, remember, it's not, nothing's done in a vacuum, versus making the selection for more of a highly valued position at another place on the football team. That's the better route to go, as opposed to trying to think that, like, the difference between the left tackle they're taking in the end of the first round versus that left tackle you get in the fifth round versus the running back you get in the first round versus the running back talent you get in the fifth round. There's a difference between those two. And the tackle drop off is much more stiffer because it's about positional value. It's about what's more weighted in the NFL, positionally speaking. Rabbitron, thoughts on Dominic Felton? Yeah, in my tape study, I kind of called him he's a poor man's Reggie Bush, in my opinion. Not Reggie in a lot of respects of just his ability to, his sort of his stop and start ability, that ability to go so fast. Where am I, Felton? I'm getting my notes on him here, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, here we go. So he's 5'10", 200 pounds. I look at him as probably being a late third to an early fourth rounder, but I called him sort of that little bit of that, Reggie Bush, sort of kind of a Ronald Jones type, where he's going to be able to cut through traffic and sort of his jump cutting ability to sort of create lanes for himself as a running back goes. Again, he doesn't have that sort of the stop start Reggie could, where he could stop and then get right back up to full speed within 3 steps. But he can cut through traffic that way. He's got really good hands. You can line him up at wide receiver and actually ask him to run wide receiver routes, and he can run them well. Him and Michael Carter are the two guys at running back that really do that in this draft. A lot of people like to sell you on guys and say, oh, he's a running back who can play wide receiver too. No, he's a running back you can line up wide. These are two guys, though, that are not that. They're truly two guys you could actually ask them to play wide receiver, and that might be better positional fit for them than running back to a certain degree. He just let me see my notes I got here. I think he's a little too light to sustain a lot of carries at the NFL level. He's 5'10", 200 pounds, but he looks about 185, 190 to me on the football field. I don't think you're going to ask him to carry it more than 5 to 8 times a game, really, and you're going to give him some touches on the outside. So you really want to look at him as a weapon first and foremost, rather than thinking him as running back 1 or running back 2 or your third down back. Obviously, third down specialist would be where you could push him in right off the gate with Seattle, and he would have a role like that, and he'd have a nice role for Seattle like that. He would be an ideal end-around type guy as well in this offense. So we're going to run a lot of that stuff from the Rams offense with the receiver coming in motion. Man, that stuff would fit him really well. He could do it right on the same level as a guy like Deebo Samuel's been able to do with the San Francisco 49ers over the last couple of years in running that end-around game. He sets up his blocks with patience. This is part of his jump cutting thing. He doesn't rush the play, doesn't force things. He'll sit back and let things kind of set up in front of him, and then wield and work his way around traffic, which is impressive. Just nice little feel for what he's doing out there with the ball in his hands. He's not just trying to be fast and get to a spot, but he knows how to sort of set things up. He's got a spin, stiff arm, dead legs. Guy's got a lot of different moves. So he's not just a one-trick pony. He's got a lot of different little things that he can do with his game that make him exciting as a player. He is brought down a little bit easily in traffic. He's not going to drag any defenders. So, yeah, I mean, this is a guy that, from the running back standpoint, he's not falling forward and getting you extra yards, 3 yards in a cloud of dust guy. He's more of your home run hitter type when you're bringing him in there. But he understands how to be real patient. He can cut back across the grain, find that hole on the backside, and he can be kind of gone. He just doesn't have an electric, dynamic, long speed either. So it's like he'll get you that out in front, and then it's kind of like slows down and they catch up to him a bit. But fun prospect, and I like the fact that he's multifaceted. You can use him a bunch of different ways. Michael Smith, if Seattle drafts a guard like Aaron Banks or whoever, do you think Damian Lewis can play center? I don't know if that'll help him in pass pro or not. I am not in favor, Michael, of moving Damian Lewis to center. And here's where we've landed with this a little bit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get some more coffee. I'm going to be right back. Bear with me, folks. Sorry about that, folks. Gotta get the coffee going here. I was finishing up my thoughts on that. So Damian Lewis, you haven't drafted an offensive lineman here in Seattle for years that has been a good guy in his first year, has given you hope. You've had to sort of fill in for mistakes and holes. I pointed at the start of this stream, I pointed to the fact that you've drafted, excuse me, got a drop of water here on my nose. Over the last 5 years of drafting, you've taken 5 guards in the top 5 rounds. You've taken, what did I have here? We had 2 centers taken. It's one of those things, and luckily you have stayed away a little bit from the tackle position, but you've gone after a lot with failed results, miserable results. Now finally with a guy like Damian Lewis, you get a guy who's developmental, who's young, who's got 2 more years of cheap club control at the right guard position, at which he played nearly a Pro Bowl level last year. And then after having that good first year, being that first lineman to do that in years, we're going to then move him off the position, which has been one of the failings of this team over the last 10 years, is moving offensive linemen off of their natural position to the position that's not natural. See Ethan Posick, see Jermaine Ifedi, see Justin Britt. So this is one of those places where you learn from your mistakes prior. And learning from mistakes is leave Damian Lewis where he is. This is where I applaud them on Gabe Jackson. Gabe Jackson's been playing right guard for Oakland Raiders for the last couple of years. Came into the league as a left guard. But they traded for Gabe Jackson, and they didn't say, okay, you're going to stay at right guard, and then we'll move Damian Lewis over. They said, no. Gabe Jackson, you're going to move over. You're going to move over. So likewise here, leave Damian there. Don't create a new hole. You very well could end up moving Damian Lewis off the right guard, and now you've created a hole at right guard to get below league average play at center, to get league average play at center, to take Damian Lewis from being the mauler he is at right guard, the pure fit he is at right guard, to a somewhat fit over at center. That's why I just can't quite get beyond it, Michael. I understand why. I know why people go that route with it, but I just can't get on board with it. Ethan, would you rather target positional needs for improvement? We don't have empty spots, or best player available, even if it's that position like center, wide receiver. I would maybe, the one place is that first pick, Ethan. I would look at making a little bit of a change to my rule on if it's one of those couple of guys that I've highly rated at the center, but I might have a little bit better rated corner, or I have a little bit better rated tight end. I would lean for the center because of the positional value that I would attribute to it myself. Outside of that center position, everything else through the draft, best player available on the board. And I would, even with that second pick, probably depending on if it's just such a good player, if he's just wide, far and away much better than the best center I got on the board, the best left guard, the best left tackle talent I have on the board, I could be talked into it even with that, because I truly do believe you get your best future teams out of picking for best player available rather than for picking for need. UE2K says Aaron Banks is big enough to play either tackle position as well as guard. Had he returned to Notre Dame this season, he was moving to left tackle. He's the guy that hasn't, none of really those linemen with Notre Dame really blew me away on their tape too much, UE. I mean, none of them did. I think all of them will probably play in the NFL. I think I would file them all into the same place that I'd file a guy like Alex Leatherwood, where it's guys that'll play in the league, but I don't know how good they really are going to be. And with Aaron, he's got some holes in his game. And if we're looking for more of the movable lineman, the guy that really can move, sometimes he's just a big dude out there a little bit. But if you're looking at getting Aaron where the potential is, you've got a long-term answer at left guard, long-term answer at left tackle as well, or even right tackle, then, hard to argue with it. I think, again, he will play in the league. I don't think he's got a bust factor to him, really. He's got enough of the natural ability to him where he will get by at least on that out the gate. But I didn't see a left tackle in him when I was watching him. I didn't see something that was screaming to me left tackle. Michael Barker says, with 17 games, how do they balance home and away? Do we get 9 home games? Seems unfair. We get, less than that. We get the eight home games, and we get 9 road games this year. So I think we got to go out to Pittsburgh, as I understand it. We drew the short straw. I would hope every year that flips back and forth. I would hope that they would make that even and not just have like they've done with us with the 10 a.m. games, where we always seem to have 5 or 6 10 a.m. games every year, which is a little annoying. Ethan Steckworld, how many more positions on the field that aren't important could we fall into the trap of? We've done first round picks of linebacker, running back, and run stuffing edge rusher. What are other? So I'm prepared. um, how many more positions on the field that aren't very important we could fall into? And it's not necessarily that there's always positions that are important. There's just positions that are a little more important. I would argue. I mean, that's kind of it. To me, it's cornerback, running back are the two on either side of the football for us. Those would be the two positions I'd really gravitate first and foremost to say you don't need to put those at a high priority to find. You should be able to work that around. Cornerback because of schematics, running back because of the nature of the position and how close the talent is together around the whole draft, where they're not as separated as some people might think. So those would be the two off the thing. If I'm going from there, I still think lines get preferential treatment, both the offense and defensive lines. I think if you're looking at the top, obviously an offensive line, you want, I've gone from this before where to me, it's left tackle, left guard, center left guard somewhere in there, and then you'd go right tackle, right guard. And then defensive line, it would be blindside pass rusher, left defensive end, 3 tech, and then 1 tech, as far as how their priority would go for me, as far as what I'd look for and how I'd measure what's more important than something else. Safety would be the one that would be annoying at this point. You asked what's another position? That would be another position that would be annoying here. Because you've drafted, as I was looking at here in the last 5 years, in the top 5 rounds, you've drafted 5 safeties, and you also allotted a 5th round pick for Diggs and a 1st and a 3rd round pick for Adams in this upcoming draft, which means that you've put over the last 5, what will be now the 6th year here, over 6 years, you've put essentially 8 picks into the safety position. So that would be disappointing to see if they did that, and that's another position where people are telling us should be more devalued. This is why the franchise tag is only running about $10.5 million, $11 million or so for those guys, because the league devalues them in this way. Randall says, how many picks do we end up with? I'll set the over-under at 6.5. I'm under on that. Hard to generate more picks out of just 3. That's the problem. And especially when one of those, you're missing the first rounder, which would be one of the main ways you generate those multiple picks. That's gone. You're without the 3rd rounder, so you've got to do it basically all off that 2nd rounder because those other picks are so late. I just don't think that there's enough picks unless they're going to look to try to trade from next year's draft into this year's draft, but you're already down 1 first-round pick for next year's draft as we stand anyway. I don't know. I think that he's probably I think 4 to 5 is about where I think hard to see past 5 picks, them getting more. Micah Parker says, I'm a Husky, Jacob Eason fan. He needs a chance. Well, look, he got a great arm. I mean, the guy can, any pass in the book he can throw. He's got the size you look for. The problem is that this modern NFL is moving towards more of a mobile-centric quarterback where it isn't a thing now that is, well, if you happen to have it, it'll be good, but if you don't, we'll make do. You can just do your pocket thing. I think the pocket passer is very much going to go away. I know Tom Brady is keeping it alive almost single-handedly, and Mac Jones maybe is the next coming of the pocket passer, but I do believe that it is one thing that is going to kind of start to go away as you need mobility at the position. So I like Jacob, but the mobility thing ends up catching up and biting you on the butt one point or another. With that said, with his arm, at some point he is going to get on the football field, and we'll see if he can let it rip and be just that special with his arm talent to be able to get it done. Because let's face it, I think he probably has some similar characteristics in what he can do with throws that Justin Herbert does, but doesn't have that mobility of Justin Herbert, and that's what you do need. GoHawks05, I just saw a dude on TikTok says Russ ain't a Hall of Famer because he's lost too much. Yeah. That's more of a product of Russ being on primetime games and being out there and people seeing so much of him that people just, again, lose context of the situation with it. And I've been a detractor throughout this offseason of Russell in certain spots, especially how things ended up last year. But make no mistake about it. The man retires tomorrow. He is a Hall of Famer. He's not waiting until the Veterans Committee either. He's probably voted in the Hall of Fame very soon after he retires at that point. He's changed the game. He's dominated the game for a 10-year stretch as far as his play overall speaking. And I don't think I don't even think that's a tough one for the Hall of Fame voters when that one does come up. Luckily, he's going to have more years to pad it, but he's going to get in there. Just somebody on TikTok trying to speak some crazy stuff. Go Hawks 05. What do you think about signing Justin Houston because of the Aldon Smith stuff? Well, if he's there and he's available and they can get him, I was understanding that maybe Indianapolis was going to look at re-signing him back into the fold there. But Justin was on that list of guys that I said at the kind of start of the offseason, go Hawks. You can take this list of like 10 pass rushers. They're all going to be making somewhere between here and here, which is not a lot of money. They're all going to get about a 1-year deal. They don't cost any draft capital to trade for. Target 2 of these guys. And Dunlap would have been on that list, and Hyder would have been on the list. And so if you're able to get 3 of those guys, I'm overjoyed that they would be able to pull that off if they are. You're not on the hook for Aldon with a lot of money. If you want to cut him right now, you can cut him for and lose only $137,000 off your cap by cutting him. So they have the money to move, and they can pick him up if they wanted to. I would tend to believe that they're going to let this Aldon situation maybe play out just a little bit before they decide what they do. Give it a little bit more time to figure out if it's really going to go into a serious stage of things or not. John Smith is unbanned my main account. I didn't do anything. What's your main account, John? Ethan Text World, quick baseball talk. Really frustrating loss for the Mariners today, but a split with Boston ain't too shabby. Now on to the disgusting, vile Houston Astros. Yeah, well, you got to give Seattle Mariners props to open up this thing here. They've done pretty well with one of the more tougher schedules to begin baseball with. So once the schedule starts getting easier, they might start stacking up a few more wins down there. And just encouraging to see the franchise on the right track now. Things actually in a place of starting to grow and build and go towards something as opposed to just muddling through and kind of never really seeming to have much of a plan in place. But they're a fun team. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of baseball as of yet, but I plan on checking out a bunch this summer. Ethan says so I'm prepared. Say the Hawks are looking for another wide receiver. How difficult would it be for John and Pete to screw it up because there are loads of wide receivers along with cornerbacks? It's possible. I would say that when you look at that list that I was mentioning recently of the last 5 years and how they've drafted, they've taken 4 wide receivers. So 6 defensive ends, 5 guards, 5 safeties, 4 wide receivers. That's your top list of targets, positions that they've targeted in the draft. So if we take the recent history, then that would tend to lead me to believe that wide receiver will be a position that they will probably target. And that they understand the value of wide receiver to me. They're not like the Green Bay Packers have been with Aaron Rodgers in regards to his wide receivers, where they're just always trying to kind of get by with it. That it always seems a position that they never really fully address in the way they need. I would say similar with them on tight end. They do good with their offensive line, but some of the other stuff is kind of but I think Seattle's not that way. I think they've done the opposite of the Packers, where they've gone a little bit less certain on the offensive line and try to draft guys for the future, like the Packers do with their wide receivers. It's kind of the inverse philosophies there. But I don't think they'll screw it up, Ethan. And I think even if they do screw it up and they get stuck in a situation, you can go out, I believe, and always find some wide receiver from somewhere out another team that's probably disgruntled and wants out of town. So I don't think it would necessarily kill them if it ends up that way, but I still look at them targeting a wide receiver at some point along in this process. UE2K, I see Aaron Branks as a shell upgrade. Notre Dame recent success has all been built on its line play. They're not always spectacular, but they're well coached, technically sound, and solid NFL linemen. Maybe he can push him. Hard to see him overtaking him when he's been playing guard. Just you're going to move him out to right tackle, and you instantly know that he'll be an upgrade over Shell, who had a reasonably good year for you last year. Wasn't maybe the same player coming in off of his injury later on in the year, but he started out and he played very well for you through the first probably 10, 11 games of the season before that injury did hit. But again, with that said, look, he's in the final year of his deal, and so is Wayne Brown. We do need to get some future set up at both of those two positions, and it would be tough next offseason to have to go into that offseason not having a starter at left tackle and not having a starter at right tackle. That is for sure. D-Nugget says, if the pocket passer is going away, why doesn't Lamar Jackson work? Because Lamar Jackson goes to the extreme edge of the other side of things. Lamar Jackson's not Tim Tebow throwing the ball, but he's not necessarily hugely far off that either necessarily. He's better. He is better. He can do a lot of throws. He's got a better mechanics, better motion, but he's not a lot of touch on throwing the football. So the thing is that yes, you need a mobile quarterback, but it's sort of like you need all of what the passer pocket had, the passer pocket, the pocket passer had before. You need everything of what the statues had before, and the processing and throwing with anticipation and ability to, throw off 3, 5, 7 step drops and do all the stuff a quarterback traditionally would do. But then they need to have mobility in addition to that. Not they need to have all this mobility, but they can't throw and they can't hit anything, and their accuracy isn't all that great. That's where the delineation comes into play, D-Nugget. So it's that you need the pocket passer, but the pocket passer needs the legs with being that pocket passer. You can't just be a pocket passer who's going to rocket gun everything all over the football field. You saw that with Justin Herbert last year, where it was his legs that surprised everybody. They knew he could throw, they knew he could make all, but can he do it off time? Can he do it when the pockets collapse? Can he do it when he's got to be forced off his spot, throw off platform? Yeah, he proved he could, and that's that extra element that I'm speaking towards. Y2KJ, I'm very concerned about Shell or Brown getting injured. I say draft a tackle. I have no problem with them going that route. I would be just about as equally happy to them drafting a center. My only worry then is that you're rolling with Posick and Fuller at center at that point. That's a little bit light. I don't know if later on in the draft you're going to get the center that can come in there and compete at that point. Like you could maybe find later in the draft a tackle that could come in there and do something, like an Alaric Jackson out of Iowa. It might be 5th, 6th, 7th round guy who could push it right tackle, for instance. Go Hawks 05. I've played every spot on the O-line. There is a massive difference between tackle and guard. I don't see Banks as an upgrade over Shell. In fact, it would be catastrophic. Yeah, I'm not Go Hawks. I'm in the same kind of boat on. And part of it is just I'm not this big on Aaron Banks, Yui. So it could be just my evaluation on Banks. But when I was watching the tape on Eichenberg, my eyes kept being drawn over to Brooks and some of what he was failing in some of those games I was watching. Just him holding up over there. It wasn't always the best tape. It's just another guy that's got the size, pedigree, background to go and make you think, talk yourself into being this super stud. But the tape doesn't always match up with him on it. Sorry, I lost my place here. Michael Parker, how much weight do you give any particular college team in drafting? Is second overrated? Is the SEC overrated? How much weight do you give any particular college team in drafting? I think what you mean, Michael, is essentially, is there more conference that I'm going to weight a little bit more in guys and give them bigger value because they've essentially played in a tougher conference? And absolutely, I think you have to do that. I mean, this is why you've got to take players that also play at lesser, call it Division 1A or whatever, just where they're not at the top of the line guys, when they're playing Appalachian State and Toledo, at Ball State, all these kind of teams. That's like you're playing against guys that are going to have other professions in a couple of years. That's not going to be football. So you might be a stud on that team. You might be out there running circles around guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean you would dominate up against equivalent talent. And the thing that you like about the SEC that you see week in and week out is you got NFL guys going up against other NFL guys. I can watch Jamar Chase last year smoke show Trayvon Diggs, and I can look at that and go, I'm very impressed right now by Jamar Chase, but it was also part of the reason why I didn't love Trayvon Diggs' tape, because he showed a lot of that on his tape as well. It's like, kind of soft, but you got to see two guys going against you. You got to see him pushed by real talent. If Trayvon Diggs is out there and he's being matched up against nothing wide receivers that aren't really challenging him, he just is going to dominate him all day, but it's not really informed you about the prospect that much. You've got to weight it that way. I don't necessarily like doing this because you have to even weight a thing like the SEC over something like the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever the hell the number they're at right now. And I know people love Zach Wilson, but that competition thing is legit. They ran around. They kind of ran away from the tough competition last year, and the Pac-12 hasn't been the same for years now, as far as just where it was, in my opinion, of 90s, early 2000s to where it is now. I think they're not quite as good as they used to be, and it's unfortunate. I don't like weighting it that way, but you have to. Big Ten, nobody plays defense historically the last recent years, so you can certainly judge offenses, but it gets hard to judge defenses because nobody wants to play defense there. Everything's got to be a track meet. John Smith will get you unbanned. 1 second. Let me catch up on the chat. Ethan, any positions in this draft, John, need to be lunatics in order to screw up? I don't know too much about tight ends in this draft, but I think Waldron would have an interest in tight ends. I think that they'd be lunatics not to address the offensive line, Ethan, and not even being picky, but center, left guard, left tackle, right tackle. Addressing it in that way and not addressing it, this is one of the deeper offensive line classes we've seen. It's not top heavy, but just deep throughout. To ignore that for, let's say, the tight end position, which has over the last couple of years been weak, year in and year out. You go get past Kyle Pitts in this draft, and the tight ends are kind of Fairmouth's okay. Brevin Jordan's okay. Their last year's tight end class wasn't that good. So you're picking a position at that point that may be a need, but you're picking it over something that's a better value. And frankly, I would offer is more of a need. I think right now at tight end, looking beyond the three guys we got, you can get other guys later on. You don't need to just roll with this. You can find guys via trade, and there's other spots to get other tight ends in other places if that's really where you need to go from that spin. And that's understanding too that you went out and got Gerald Everett this offseason, so it's not like you haven't added to the ranks. I know it's only 3 deep, but it's 3 decent guys there as they sit. But I would say offensive line, Ethan. You'd be a lunatic to avoid the offensive line in this draft, and you'd be a lunatic to avoid, I think, a corner in this draft. That's where the two positional strengths are really aligned. Michael Smith, any offensive tackles you like the Hawks taking with their first pick? Yes. I don't think Dylan Radins is going to be there, so we'll take him off the board. If Walker Little does fall, and there's a little bit of uncertainty about where he'll be because he opted out last year out of Stanford, but his tape in 2019 is great. If he were to fall there, I certainly would like him. I think Samuel Cosmi is probably going to fall. Is probably going to be picked in the early second round. That's probably right around where he's going to be. He'd be a fantastic pickup. He'd be kind of an ideal. I think if we're being realistic about the guy who could be available in that spot. If not him, I would look at Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan, because I think he can play both left and right tackle. Real athletic kid, got all the size you want to see out there. He's got really good feet. So he'd probably be the guy. There'll be a couple of left tackles there for you. I'd look at the more of the strength I think would be more into the center guard. Even a guy like Kendrick Green, I'd probably feel a little bit better than the tackles that are available at that point, because I think he's going to be a bit of a stud. Or David Moore or Quinn Miners, these guys. But there's some good tackles there, Michael, if you did go that route. Those are guys who I don't see star potential in them, but solid starter potential there. Yeah, there's a grip of guys with that. You're talking to D Nuggets, sorry. Randall McDaniel, Jamar Chase reminds me of Anquan Bolden. Physical, plays bigger than they are. Yeah, he's like an Anquan Bolden, but he's like a fast Anquan Bolden. Because Anquan Bolden was probably like a 4.55 guy coming out. I forget you could probably post to Randall what his 40 was, but I want to say Anquan was a little slower as far as his 40 time goes. He had good quickness, excellent hands. He wasn't a real separator. And Jamar's not a real separator either, but Jamar's legit. Jamar is legit 4.4 out there. He's legit 4.4, 4.39, 4.38 type guy in the football field, which just makes him that much more explosive than Anquan. Not much more than just being more of a possession guy that these guy can house it on any play. John Smith, which team should I rebuild in Madden, Saints or Patriots? Probably be funner to do the Saints, John, because you're set the stage for, Madden retires Brady. It always retires Brady, the guys that get old quick. So you'll have Brady out the division. It'll be easier to take that division. Where the AFC East is getting tough. It's going to be tough. Go Hawks says Pats. Little Savage says the Saints. John says, I'll make it easier for you. Basically, the field general era is over and now improvisers are starting to come about. I think it's a bit of that. I think it's a little bit of a mix. It's the quarterback that can do both. It's a little bit of what I've said. This is the transition we got of Russell Wilson making, where you're going into this now. You're going from having a guy that was playing off script, holding the ball a little too long, always trying to look for the dig play. Well, now mix in some of the short passing concepts, the intermediate passing concepts that have been a little bit empty of this offense. Start bringing that in. And then you work a little bit more into being, rather than being all one thing or all another thing, it starts to become a mix, and it starts to be something that where you're disguising. You're making it harder for people to know what's coming. And that's at the bedrock of this new offense, is an unpredictability and an inability to know what is coming with this offense. And that is how you get there, by challenging the defense in every realm of the football field, challenging them horizontally, vertically, challenging them short, and challenging them deep. And it's an easier said than done proposition, because I think offenses fall in love with one thing or another, and they get very one-centric minded onto it. And it takes sort of a true plan put in place to really take a full opportunity of everything, take advantage of everything. So, sorry. Randall says, if Will Disley has lost his explosion, could he add another 15 to 20 and embrace the sixth tackle position? He has good blocking skills already. He could. They'd have to go all in on he's just done as a wide receiving threat at that point, which this is where it's pure conjecture on my part, Randall, because I don't know where they stand with him as far as is his speed gone. You know, we heard from Tyler Lockett a couple of weeks ago after he signed his contract that he had indeed lost a step after he broke his leg back in the day, that he never recovered that one step of speed back. And it is one of those things in modern science that we all say, oh, we'll get him back to 100% next year. He'll be fine. Everything will be good in just a year from now. Just let him heal up. But there are times those injuries do, take you down forever, and you're never able to get back to what you once were. I don't know, though, with him. We don't have any information from Disley or any of the other people about if that is where he is with it. Maybe I'll reach out to Will on Twitter and see if he'll do an interview with us, and he can tell us if he like Tyler has lost a step that he's trying to make up for. That was a very odd moment of honesty on Tyler's part, by the way. Ethan, do you remember when it was? Do you remember what it was like when Damian Lewis was drafted? Was he the best player available, or did the Seahawks just score on him being both a fantastic guard as well as him being a positional need? Well, my draft reaction, which you can go back and take a look at because it's still currently absolutely up. I was live streaming during the selection of Damian Lewis, and he was the pick I felt best about of those opening picks, right the second he was drafted, because he was a player that I saw, and what you read about him being is that this is a 10-year starter in this league who's got some great run blocking potential. I thought, here we go. This is what you need to target in on. These are the guys you need to grab. And was it a position of need? No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. This is a position of best player available on the board. You had DJ Fluker for one more year on contract. You had the right guard situation settled, Steer, for one more season if you wanted. But they drafted Lewis because they determined Lewis was a better player right now than what Fluker was. And they released Fluker out. And so that was more, to me, quantitatively speaking, Ethan, an example of them going for BPA, best player available, more than it was them reaching for need. So a need there would have been left guard. That was the need at the point. You bring back Guy Potty with his glass ankles. You knew he wasn't going to play a full year. That was the need. That was where, but they went the other way. They went right guard, and good thing they did. That's drafting success. That's how you build the draft out correctly. I'd argue the same thing with the Darrell Taylor pick, whether it works out or not. You're drafting to a position of need there. And not only did you use a second-round pick, you trade up from the third round. You used a third-round pick to trade up in the second round to go get him. Again, you're drafting there for need. You needed a Leo. You lost Jadeveon Clowney. Ziggy Ansah gone. You needed a Leo. So you're drafting there for need. And then you end up with a guy with a rod in his leg who can't play through a season because you were just certain with your medicals that you'd get him back. That's where, to me, you get yourself into trouble. Little Savage, John, my Madden franchise is starting to... Oh, you were speaking to John, sorry. John Smith, yep, NFL is becoming a running backs league. I don't know what NFL you're watching. It's not to my eyes. How many thousand yard backs last year were there in the league, John? And then go back 10 years ago and look at how many 1,000-yard backs were in the league. And then go back another 10 years and see how many 1,000-yard were back per year. And you'll see that incrementally dropping by the decade. Micah Clark, thoughts on TJ Fasher, unless you were busy and didn't get over him yet? I got that one. I did get that one, Micah. I missed one of my guys here on this one, but I did get that one. So let me get some Fasher notes here. I watched actually a little bit of his tape. Somewhere here. Oh, there we go. So TJ Vasher, number one, didn't do a lot at his pro day. Looked a little bit deep into a Micah to see if I could get a little bit of a feel for him because he is that big 6'6" guy. 37-inch vertical leap, long wingspan. So this guy is a lot like in that same thing realm we were talking about with Fayoki from Stanford or Sage Surratt from Wake Forest. These are guys that are really predominantly contested catch type guys. So with TJ Vasher, he does it really well. He's not a high efficient contested catch guy. When I watch game film on him, yeah, you'll get a flashy shot down the field where he goes up over defenders and makes a catch, but there's usually been 3 or 4 attempts by the quarterback to get that one flashy catch. So it's not where he's just man-childing everything out there and nobody can stop him and he's mossing people all over the football field. That's not the case. He is very good with a contested catch, being so tall, legitimately 6'6" tall. He can like go up there and get it where it's sort of shades of sort of a Marquez Colston type from the Saints from a few years ago. Just being that big to go up, there's a part of me that wonders if you could push him into the slot a little bit and utilize some of that out of the slot, specifically because of the secondary reason with him, which is the issue of press. He was a guy I was referencing earlier on in the show, Micah, as far as the problem with him is that the second that those cornerbacks get up underneath him, up underneath those ribs because he's so tall, it slows him down. It throws him off his route. All his momentum at times could be completely halted. And it was really, really rough at those points to watch that film because he was done on the play. He had nothing to offer. He wasn't getting off of it. He couldn't remove himself from the cornerback. He does have a little bit of this nice footwork thing where he uses his feet sort of choppy like Simi does, but where Simi uses it to really go with a purpose, he's sort of trying to feel the cornerback out. He's sort of trying to feel the press to sort of dance around the press with his big 6'6" frame. It's impressive to watch a guy that big be able to kind of dance a little bit like that, but he's too big to be able to pull it off, and they still always seem to get up into him on that press then. He is, let me see on my notes here what else I got with him. Yeah, he's got the good footwork to get around the press. The one thing that I don't like as well with him is that he seems to lose speed when the ball is in the air. Some guys like a Terrace Marshall type in this draft, they pick up speed when the ball is in the air. They gain separation when the ball is in the air. This guy when the ball is in the air, sort of like he almost is losing a step or two as he's slowing down and turning it into a contested catch situation. I would wonder if maybe that's one of the reasons he didn't run the 40 at his pro day. And I would probably argue if you see him run his 40 right now, he's probably running like a 4.6-ish 40. Now he's 6'6", 37-inch vert, probably 33, 34-inch long arms. It's good. But here's my bottom line on him. There's no question as a goal line jump ball artist, he'd be great in the NFL. He can offer that in the NFL right out the jump, okay? Speed, negative. Strength, negative. Route running, negative. Hands, okay. If all he's offering is that jump ball ability and he's got those negatives to his game, where is his value at that point? To me, he probably gets selected because of his red zone threat type ability and what he can offer with that. But to me, that's really about all of where he lands as far as his upside goes. Michael Parker, is our punter kicker duo tops in the NFL? We really take it for granted. Yeah, I think we have, and not only that, I think we have the number one special teams unit in the NFL right now, and we absolutely take it for granted. Fans do not measure that with enough weight as I believe they should. It's part of why we are a better team than some people maybe think we do because they don't put it as a third aspect to the team. It's sort of like this half aspect to the other two full parts of the team, and it's not that way. Our coverage on kick returns and punt returns, our ability with field goals and punts, all that stuff, it's the kickers and punters we have, I think we're number one. If not, we're definitely top 3. He says mobility is becoming the default at quarterback is because of the freakish athletic talent on D these days. Often the worst athlete on the field are tasked with stopping the best athlete on the field. Absolutely a solid point. This transition started to happen about 15 years ago where the best big boys, those big dogs down on the line, they stopped going over to offensive line. They started going to defensive line. So that's where you get sacks. That's where you get paid. And the more athletic guys went to that side of the ball. The big boys that could move with that weight went to the defensive side, went to the defensive line. And now what you've had conversely with the offensive side of the ball is that they've stopped running the ball as much. It's a lot more patty caking and pass protection, but that you don't have those athletes on that side of the ball. And it's a problem, with pass protection. That's an issue league wide. It's not just with our Seahawks. This is a problem with a lot of different teams in finding guys that can hold up over there because of the way that this is strewn. It's just a matter of you can't stop it. This goes back to Pee Wee football and where the best guys end up going to and gravitate towards and get comfortable there. And nothing about that's going to change as we go forward. All the more reason I would say valuing good offensive linemen that can move with those defensive linemen. That's why you want to give more, weight to that. And yeah, you're right. That's why you also need the quarterback to be able to move, because to a degree, you're only going to be able to overcome this slightly. It's such a huge difference between the non-athletics at the offensive line and the super athletic freaks at the defensive line. There's just going to be times those guys break free. Aaron Donald's going to get home a couple times during the game. Can the quarterback break out of that, break free, still make a good play of it, or does it have to be a complete negative play at that point in time when that happened, as it would have been in the past when you had a statue quarterback who couldn't get out of the way of that freakishly fast, athletic defensive lineman? Michael Smith, is Kendrick Green what a third-round pick, and Hawks would transition him to a center, I guess? I've got Kendrick Green as a pure left guard. I love him at left guard, Michael. He's one of my favorite left guards in this draft, so I wouldn't move him to center, but I like him at left guard. They might move him to center to get some depth in there with Posick and have him challenge with Posick, but long-term, I think he would be your left guard of the future if you picked him, and yes, I would expect him to be a third-round pick. You could even pick him in the back of the second round, and that would be appropriate value for that guy. His tape is really good. He looks solid. Don't have a lot that I can nail him to the wall on being. I like Green. Good movement, good size, move guys off the line, really good in pass protection, good feet, he can anchor. Good stuff. Fish, I like TJ Vasher, but he has to get stronger. Yeah, Fish, that's it. The strength stuff is just, they get their hands on him and they just hold him. And and not hold him and like illegally hold him, but just lock him down. Like it brings all of his forward momentum to a complete standstill. Tough to watch at times. He does what he can to get around it, but it's certainly something at the NFL level, which they're not going to get you. You won't get an inch off the line, dude. They don't have to let you go if you can't get past the 5 yards. Randall, if Joe Tyron is there when we pick, do you take him? I don't. You've taken 6 defensive ends in the last 5 years of the draft in the top 5 rounds. Last year, you gave up, and then in addition to that, you gave up a third-round pick last year. So really, you've allotted 7 picks in the last 5 years in the top 5 rounds to defensive ends. At what point or another do you need to start addressing other positions, in my opinion? It's by far, Randall, the number one position you've addressed the last 5 years in the draft that highly. As I was speaking about recently, it was your first pick in 2015, 2017, 2019, and then it was your second pick in 2018 and 2020. So I feel like you've addressed this quite a bit. We've got a lot of young guys that we're waiting on to come around. They would need to think him so freakish and so mind-blowing a talent at that point to make that selection, in my opinion. UE2K says, I like the Lewis pick from the start. He was a solid starter and had faced great competition. Felt he would start immediately. Hasn't disappointed. Nope. He's been just what I hoped he would be. And I knew he'd struggle a little bit in pass protection. That wasn't his forte. But you can have your right guard struggle a little bit in pass protection. It's not the worst thing to have a right guard, not as long as he's an absolute road grader right as a run blocker, you can overcome that a little bit. Michael, do you have any other teams you like to root for? I'm also rooting for Jacksonville and San Diego next year. Any underdog choices? I always like a little bit of Buffalo. I got a soft spot for Buffalo a little bit, but I'm really just a Seattle Seahawks fan. I don't have every other team to me at the end of the day is just the enemy. I don't know. I'm just hard for me to root for anybody else, especially because we played in 2 different divisions. So there's, 6 teams right there that are just always going to be hated for me in my heart. But I like the Buffalo fans are as committed as they are. I like that that's a small little area. They got an NFL team. It makes me laugh a little bit. But hopefully they can get, and especially with them having to go for that 4 Super Bowl losses in a row in the 90s, which was brutal. Go Hawks, I think sometimes it takes another year to get that speed back. Yeah, that does tend to be another thing. If it is coming back, sometimes it does take that extra year to come back, Go Hawks. It's not always that they get it back immediately with that. It's a good point, too, as well. There's not any one set way that those injuries go. Some guys, it robs them. Some guys can bounce back. Usually the guys that do bounce back or that are able to bounce back do so because of the fact that they're young when the injuries happen. If it happens when you're 30, 31, 32, it's going to be tough to get back that speed. Happens when you're 20, 21, 22, 23, you got more of a likelihood of being able to get back from it and still be able to be an effective player. UE2K says, hated the first 2 picks, wanted Taylor and Claypool. I would have loved that draft, Huey. That would have been marvelous. And I was all over our Taylor, especially with all the inside zone stuff we were running with Schottenheimer. he would have been just yeah, there's the downfall of the penny pick coming to bloom there on that one. I don't like drafting running backs, but he would have been in the first round. But no doubt about it, Jonathan Taylor would have been the purified 99.9999999% running back fit for what we would want. And boy, Claypool and DK, that would be tough. Fish, I don't think we needed a wide receiver last year. Moore was a good third wide receiver, and I wish we still had him back. We wouldn't have had to worry about a wide receiver. Yeah, it would have been I could have understood them going at it. I mean, you add Moore here, but you didn't know what was going to happen with Josh Gordon. That wasn't a super deep team, and Moore was only going to be here for one more year. So there was a thought process there. You could have gone wide receiver especially it was a good class of wide receivers as well. UE2K says, now that we're in the NFC, I can root for the Raiders again. There you go. John Smith, Rams have to be, John Smith says Stafford, Akers, Kupp, Woods, Deshaun, Van Jefferson. Rams have to be favorites in the NFC West. I don't know if I'd ever put Van Jefferson as a reason that's going to put a team over the top. He's a name, John. I don't put the Rams in the same allotment. I do think Stafford makes them better at the quarterback position, but they're going to get worse at the safety position. They're going to get worse at their slot corner position. They're going to get worse at the linebacker position. They're going to get worse at the one-tech defensive tackle position. That's just the defensive side of it. So, Reynolds, they go from Reynolds to Van Jefferson. It's kind of a, I guess, semi-equivalent point there. But no, I think they take a little bit of a step back this year in totality. Randall, it's weird to me we haven't seen better tight end prospects. It's a position we've seen become more of a focal point the last 10 years. It seems like kids would gravitate to the position, tweener wide receiver types. Maybe, but, it's a position, Randall, where you got 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys, uber athletic. I think those type of guys are going to gravitate towards basketball. And that if you get a guy with real great skill with that, especially movement skill, that he's probably going to try that first and foremost. And if that doesn't work out, maybe then go to football. But it is a little odd. It's a position that's waiting to kind of explode. Maybe Kyle Pitts will start to be kind of the forerunner now for a new model of tight end coming out that is that freak show talent, 6'6", and jumps out the stadium and can make every kind of catch away from their body and is just basically nearly impossible to cover. I mean, that's what comes down to it. We've seen it at times with Gronks and some other tight ends in this league. There's just times where you look at the defender and you go, man, there was nothing you could do in that moment. He's just too big, too long, too fast. And I thought we would see more of him as well, though. I did as well. It's been a little bit of a surprise that we haven't. John Smith, how has the running back changed over the years? The running back position, John, has changed over the years, and then the analytics have taken hold. The analytics effect on basketball and baseball has been huge. It has changed those sports. Changed the way that they run their offenses, their defenses. It changes everything. Now, that same change has not fully taken hold yet in the NFL. It's slowly beginning to kind of get and take its hold. But what that has done with those analytics is it's told us, and it's got a lot of evidence to back this up, is it said, look, investing in the running back position is not a smart way to go. It's a position that gets injured quite a bit. The sustainability factor isn't there. And again, there's the difference. It's the understanding of the difference of talent, John. So a second ago, I was talking about the difference between the offensive line and the defensive line and how you take a young kid who's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and he's playing peewee football, and he's going to gravitate over to that defensive line because it's a more fabulous position right now. It's a more glitzy position. It's a more position you're going to get paid at. You got to go after the quarterback, and it's fun. Offensive line is not necessarily fun just blocking and sitting there, so it doesn't necessarily pull the best athletes over to that side of the ball. So why is this pertinent to the running back room? Because with running backs, what you have is that kids also back in that same peewee leagues, when there are these big boys deciding between offensive line and defensive line, well, the smaller kids, they're deciding as well. Do I want to play cornerback? Do I want to play running back? Do I want to play receiver? Well, it's hard to throw in the peewee leagues, isn't it? So all the greatest athletes that are young like that then gravitate towards running back. And what you have is you get that big, huge pile of talent that you now have at running back of athletes continues to carry on forward through high school and through college. And so what you have is that those guys that are just a rung below those top-end guys, they're not as far below the rung because there's so many of them that were so good in originally gravitating towards that position. The NFL was less aware of this 10, 20 years ago. It wasn't as much at the forefront of their mind that, oh, is the guy that I go and get in the third, fourth round actually fairly similar talent-wise to that first round guy that I take? And is there another position that's harder to get later in the draft, as I was talking about offensive line, that I should go and get instead because the talent is so close together? It's not that there isn't more talented running backs. Isn't that a guy in the first round like a Najee Harris isn't more talented than a Gainwell coming out of Memphis? But is he 10% better? Is he 20% better? Let's quantify this. Because the tackle you get in that first round is probably going to be about 40% better than the tackle you get in the fifth round. The running back you get in the fifth round off the first round back is probably going to be much closer to probably 10, 15% of that other running back. This is what analytics tells us about the position. Whether they're right or wrong, that's what they say is of the position. And more NFL teams are listening to this analytics and gravitating way less away from running backs. There were more running backs taken in the first round in the 90s. There were more running backs taken in the first round in the early 2000s. It's gone less and less and less and less as these teams start to get this memo. Oh, I don't need to go there to get that guy. I can go get an Antonio Gibson if I'm the Washington football team in the third round, and he could be a dynamic running back for me, and I don't have to allot that first round pick for it, so I can put my first round pick instead on a guy like Chase Young. John Smith, how do you think LeBron James would be as an NFL wide receiver? I think he probably would have been more of a tight end. It's hard to be a wide receiver at 6'8". That would have been tough. Though there was a guy named what was it, Carmichael from the Denver Broncos back in the day? It was the Eagles, I think. Carmichael. No, it was the Broncos. Wasn't it the Broncos? Carmichael? I forget. One of you guys will tell me. But I think he probably would have been a tight end. I don't know if he probably would have had the speed to be wide receiver, and I think he would have been beastly. He was a freaky, physically talented kid. I think he would have been awesome. Randall, Tyler was sure to admit losing that step after he signed that deal. Yeah, he didn't get that little nugget of knowledge until the ink was dry on that contract time, Randall. Ethan says, all right, so you're really getting me on board to the idea of going best player available. I've only recently started paying attention to the draft. Do another Damian Lewis because he was a stud pick. Agreed, Ethan. It's one of those ones where you think, okay, we're set at the position, but football is never a position you're really set at. You're always one injury away, one spot away from needing a guy out on the football field. And especially this team, which over the last 2 years has been the number one most injured team in the league, and then last year was the fifth most injured team in the NFL. Maybe we should build a little bit more into feeling that way, which is all the more reason why you go best player available. So I'm glad I'm bringing you aboard, man. Welcome aboard, and I think you'll see if they do operate that right, it'll be much more a successful draft versus if they actually truly do end up reaching for need. Jose, I didn't get the notification. I know, Jose. It sucks. It pisses me off. I do try to post also on Twitter, Jose, when I go live. So I do go over there just for the folks that don't get the notification because I know at least that'll come through. I don't know why the notification doesn't come through YouTube. They're weird about it with the using any kind of a broadcast service, I guess. I might eventually just go back to just going through the YouTube platform here for the draft. I might just try that out. But then we lose my fancy TheSeahawksNest overlay and all that. But I might do that nonetheless, just to see if that helps with the notification stuff. U2K says many high school and college programs use so much spread that tight end positions are plentiful. Also, many tight end bodies play defensive end because that's where the scholarship money is at. Same in the NFL. Very true. Very true. And to that point, tight end's still somewhat of a devalued position as far as being paid in the NFL. They're not breaking the bank. They're sort of in that safety area of things where it's like they're asked to do wide receiver stuff a lot of the time when they're really the top end guys, but then they don't necessarily get paid at the same level where wide receivers are. So this would if you're a younger player getting to high school trying to decide, and you're like, I'm a freakish young talent with a lot of physical ability, and I could pick my play where I want to pick it. Maybe you would want to pick it at defensive end for the reasons you said. Ethan Texworth says, continue. Of course, there are times and places that you got to draft for need, but with all the pickups and free agencies filling holes, we got to draft for best player available, but do get a center. Yep, that's why center I gravitated towards a little bit, Ethan, is making just a different This one's kind of locking in solid because it is that need and it's sitting there and the value would be there. If the value wasn't there, if I'm looking at a 4th round center there, I'm not making the pick. If I'm looking at a late 3rd round center there like Myers, I'm not making the pick there at that point in 2nd round. But if it's Humphrey, it's Dickerson, if it's Quinn Miners, I'm probably making that pick there. I'm probably taking that selection. But I agree. I think it's the way to go with this. Just best player available, and then if you got to make trades afterwards to fill stuff, then fill it that way through trades. Even if it's getting draft capital in the future to make it happen. John Smith, guess who ended up getting Claypool? Yeah, you guys did good on that. Steelers know how to draft wide receivers. They've proven that over the years. They have proven that over the years. They know what they're doing with wide receivers. And I do like I like UE sentiments below that, John. Steelers have great talent assessment. I admire their drafts most years. They always end up drafting guys I think the Seahawks should draft. Damn them. Yeah, you go back years with them, and they've done a very good job with how they go about what they've done with it. I mean, hell, they even got ahead of us on Minkah Fitzpatrick a couple years ago when we were trying to trade from him. But the selection of Watt, getting him at the end of the 1st round, that was fabulous. That was a great pick for them. Even like David DeCastro a couple years ago, where guard was being devalued a little at that time, and going and selecting him and just building that line right with Pouncey there as well. You had to applaud their methodology behind what they were doing. I didn't love as much them going for the middle linebacker in the top 5 picks in the 1st round a couple years ago. I thought they could have drafted better with something like that, but they do a good job. They're one of the better drafters in the league. John says it's easy to look at the losses a team have on paper and say they will fall off. You have to look at who they have on the roster. Right. And I don't just look at it just as that, John. It's also the factoring in that they've been going for it the last couple of seasons. Right, John? So they've given up a lot of draft capital to go for it the last few years. So when you lose those players, what do you have in draft capital to reload that roster back? And when you are missing 1st round picks and other picks and it's kind of light and lean, that's where I start to get a little pessimistic that you're able to rebuild so just easily. The whole thing of, they'll just for certain rebuild it. How are they rebuilding it? Who's the guy, John, that replaces Johnson at safety, who was one of the better safeties in the league last year? Who replaces Troy Hill, one of your better slot corners? Who's the equivalent you're putting in there at that level of play? Samson Ekubon got paid some money by the Niners. Who's now your new linebacker and spot there? Austin Blythe was a really good center for you last year. Who's your now center? Who's going to be your new starting center, John? So you got to, who's the player you're telling me that's going to be taken over, and then how is it that they're better than that last guy? And it's odd to me that you get the Rams who lose 7, 8 guys, and all they really do is flop out Matt Stafford and go get Deshaun Jackson, who's good for about 4 games a year, and suddenly that makes them the de facto runaway favorite in the NFC West. Meanwhile, Seattle's done nothing but build on a team that won 12 games last year. I don't understand people's thought process on that, other than they just must love them some Rams. Or they love them some Stafford, I guess. They think Stafford's going to make that much of a difference on that team, which I just don't quite buy. Michael says, how about them Cowboys? So fun to crush in the playoffs. You picking them to win their division? If we are wild carded, that's our likely opponent. What did I pick them to win? No, I got Washington. Cowboys will do something silly like draft another wide receiver this year in the draft. Jones will go, give me another wide receiver. I didn't want fast wide receivers down. Steven, come here. Steven, who you going to draft? Well, Dad, we're going to get us a Patrick Surtain, or we're going to go after this J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn. He's the son of a football player, Daddy. Yeah. I know all that. Just give me that list up there. Come on. We ain't doing that. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do right now, okay? Who's your best wide receiver you got on the board right now? Holler at me and tell me what you got now. Who's that better wide receiver? Just tell me, son. Daddy, we can't draft another wide receiver. We all got too many wide receivers. Who's your best wide receiver, damn it? Oh, damn it, Daddy. Jalen Waddle's the best wide receiver I got on my board. Well, then that's our pick, ain't it? That's who we are picking. But Daddy, he's a slot wide receiver. Steven, you shut the hell up. My name's Jerry Jones. I am Texas. I am Dallas. And if I want myself a wide receiver, I'm going to go get myself a wide receiver. Wouldn't surprise me. You already got a lot of their Cowboy channels just fellatiating themselves over the thought process of getting Pitts there as well. They just think if we get a lot of shiny outside guys, we'll just be amazing. Yeah, eventually you might want to deal with that defense. Eventually you might want to start rebuilding that offensive line again. But good luck, Dallas. No, I got Washington. I think Washington's taking the steps in the right direction. Man, if they could just get a quarterback there that was legitimate, they'd be great. Uh, Ethan says, I got in this argument with these folks. They were getting all hyped up about A.J. Green to the Arizona, and then other people pointing out how the Rams are so good without seeing how many players coaches traded. There's another good point with this, John, is it's not just about players. They've lost about 4 or 5 coaches out of that Rams team this year, including the bright young defensive mind, I think, heading to the Chargers, Staley. So it's a lot of losses. It's much easier said than done overcoming those losses. And by the way, those coaching losses and how hard they were going to hit, it wasn't just the national media. It wasn't just Seattle Seahawks fans talking about how that was going to hurt that team. It was people from within the organization saying, this is going to be tough losing some of these guys. Waldron, our run game coordinator, our defensive coordinator. You don't just go hire another guy and flip him back in, and it's like same equivalent. No. Sometimes there's guys that are difference makers in coaching and players that are difference makers. I maybe they will overcome it, but just counting on the fact the Rams overcome it because they're the Los Angeles Rams as though they're some perennial favorite to always win. No, they've had a couple years run here, and McVay's been a good coach, but I'm not giving them. That's a lot of losses to sustain. If our Seattle Seahawks had sustained the kind of losses the Rams have this offseason, we would be in a lot more of a panic mode. We'd be in big time panic mode, and rightfully so. And A.J. Green's done too, Ethan. Them getting hyped up about A.J. Green, it's like you probably would have been better bringing back Fitzgerald over A.J. GoHawk says, I'm not a fan of analytics. Coaches should trust what they know over decades of playing and coaching football. It's a man's sport, not a computer's. Well, I mean, there's times where I don't agree with all the analytics. Go Hawks, for instance, win probability crap. I've got no room for that. I don't think coaches should have to necessarily make their coaching decisions with that win probability stuff. And is it better to go for a fourth here than kick the field goal? When it comes to that stuff, I'm perfectly okay with the coach's gut instinct and being coach just relying on what he's feeling in the game. When it comes to advanced data that you can understand more information on a player, to throw it wholly out, to say that this is a man's sport, and so I'm going to toss all this extra data out, not bring it into my sphere of inclusion and consider it, I think then you're then only operating off a certain subset of data, not the complete data that you could have at your hands. And the more data you can give yourself to ascertain what you're seeing on the field, or what a player is, or what a team is, or what a coach is, or what a strategy is getting you, or what a philosophy is getting you, the more data that you can add to round out your intelligence on the matter, I think all the more better. I don't think analytics is at the place of where it is on baseball and basketball, where you can apply it pretty fervently and it makes sense, and it's something that you can change your coaching philosophy around. But certainly in evaluating players and effectiveness of schemes, I think there is a lot of value in it, in my opinion. But you're not alone as well, Gox. There's a lot of people that don't have any value in the analytics at all. I think that when you have your eye test and you're able to match it up with the analytics and then back that up then with the statistics, and if you've got any scouts that you can tap into or former players and listen to what they have to say, I mean, now you're really getting a rounding out of information to really have the full spectrum of view of what is the reality of the situation as, again, opposed to just looking through a small lens of, well, I got my eye test. My eye test says this. When you could have it out like this wide. Here, Carmichael, that's what it is. It was the Eagles. Okay. Ethan says, why are people so hyped about A.J. Green? I really don't get it. And then the Rams defenders don't understand the significance of losing all that coaching staff. I don't either. We'll see if maybe McVay is that much of a brilliant mastermind where he can overcome all of this in one offseason and just turn it all around, and Stafford's going to be that much of a difference maker. It's potentially, it could be that way. I'm not counting on it being that. I think when you look at history of teams and you lose 5, 6, 7 starters, you tend to go backwards as a team the next year. You don't tend to go forward. You don't tend to improve off of that. Whether you have all of your draft picks or not, which they do not. Whether you have all the draft cap, whether you have all the salary cap space to go out there and then buy those free agents back, other free agents to fill those positions, which they did not. They had no cap space this offseason. So just like Seattle, they were in a much worse situation though. If you're not much draft picks, not much salary cap space, you couldn't replace those guys. You had no method to do it. You have to just hope to rely on the guys you've drafted prior that they can take a step forward, which is a tough gamut to run. Randall says, if you could only sign one, remove this salary from the equation, you take KJ or Sherm. I take KJ. I probably take KJ too because he's a 2-for-1 position at this point, and your cornerback is a little more, has more depth and talent right now than your linebackers, specifically at the Sam and the coverage will linebacker. Michael says, the Steelers do have a rigged Super Bowl edge, so you got that advantage. That's true, Michael. That is very true. Can't deny that. Randall says, I think Pitts is a better prospect than O.J. Howard. I never saw O.J. make the contested catch like Pitts. Pitts understands how to use those long extendo arms. Yes, he's a much better player than O.J. Howard was as far as catching goes. Look, O.J. Howard was a very good run blocker in Alabama. I think he still will continue to be a good run blocker as he comes along in the pros. I don't think that's a bad part of his game. He was coming out as just a complete tight end, sort of. You get everything with him. You get all the pass catching of an upper level tight end, but then you also get the run blocking. Hasn't been there for him yet. He was really kind of coming along last year with Tom a little bit, but when the ACL thing, I think, popped up on him. But Pitts is one of the freakiest contested catch guys we've ever seen come out of college football. The tag being applied to him in that way is absolutely appropriate. I mean, he catches things that just he has no business catching. He's turned Kyle Trask into a NFL college prospect almost single-handedly by being able to reach out for these misthrown balls and pluck them and bring him back in where it just makes Kyle look great. But it's like, man, Kyle put that 3 feet behind him and he somehow found a way to get his fingertips on it. He's a good player. Ethan's Tech World. Yep, football, you're never set at a position. I compare it to casting for movies. In movies, it's never a mistake to add talent. And I think especially here, the Hawks should embrace that. Now, you're always one injury. You're always one torn ACL away from having a position of strength turn into a position of weakness. Best player available. This is why. Glad we agree, man. Darker H, literally every position we had losses at except center, we already had great depth at. I can name every single replacement we have for our losses. You can name every single replacement you have for those losses, Darker H, but did they start last year for you? Or did the players who you lost start? And then why weren't they starting if they were better? Well, okay, they weren't better, but they were equivalent. And again, let's go over the last 5 years. I don't have teams off the top of my head, Darker Age, but let's take playoff teams over the last 5 years. And let's just take this from a conceptual standpoint in general, off the top of our head. Those teams that went to the playoffs and then lost 5 to 6 to 7 starters off of a team, how many of those teams do you think on a percentage basis then went to the playoffs the next season? 50%? 30%? 10%? So I think you can acknowledge the fact it's probably less than 50. So if we're playing the odds and we're playing to what usually holds true, which is, again, there are anomalous situations. There are times that things don't hold to type. But I tend to rely on things as they hold to a general rule of thumb or a general pattern. And the general pattern with that would be that when you lose from a playoff team, so many intricate starters, when you have a center Darker H that's 40 some odd years old, when you're relying on that, and when you have those losses, and when you don't have the salary cap space to reinvigorate it, when you don't have really as much draft capital to reinvigorate it, well, I don't think it's a wide stretch to say you take a step back. I ain't saying you guys are going to collapse. I'm just saying a step back. Just a step back. John Smith says it's easy to look at the losses a team have on paper and say they will fall off. You have to look at who they still have on that roster. So the thought process is we acknowledge John and Darker Age. We acknowledge the fact you haven't brought those starters from off team to replace. You're fully relying on that from coming within. Well, first of all, it seems we are at least in agreement in that. Okay, so it has to happen from within. So you're leading me to believe that not only did you have enough starters for 22 starters in that thing, but then you were sitting on 6 and 7 starters who are just sitting on the bench, and that the Rams are just that stacked that they're sitting on 7 upper level starters to back up these really good players. I don't necessarily believe that, but maybe just where we disagree, and it'll be fun to see how it plays out. Darker says we lose our entire coaching staff the entire year, and it hasn't seemed to make a significant impact yet. No, you don't use. You've not had this many coaching losses in 1 year with McVay as of yet. This year's been an outlier. You may have lost a coach or two here or there, but the amount of coaches you've lost this year have been bigger. To think that they don't have the effect is, again, not to understand a little bit of the understanding of what you got with McVay when he walked in the door. McVay was an offensive-minded, masterminded guy. He was there to essentially knock the Hawks off our perch at the time, and he's done it. But he was an offensive mastermind guy. That's why they hired Wade Phillips separate of McVay and said, you're going to handle the offense, and Wade Phillips is going to handle the defense. So they understood there was a value in finding a specific good defensive coordinator there to match up with McVay, is that it's not his strength, it is his weakness. It's just one of his weakness points. So you lose that, you lose Staley now to think that now you're just going to flip a third guy in. It doesn't tend to be how it plays out in the NFL. And again, that's my whole point on this. I think that gets a little bit lost in what I'm saying with this. It's not to say that there isn't a chance the Rams could turn this around, but if you look to how history tends to hold with how this tends to affect teams who lose the 5 or 6 starters, who lose the multiple coaches at the very same time, who were playoff teams the year and then the next year suffer and sustain those losses, they tend to take a step backwards at a very minimum. It doesn't mean they're going to fall off and be into Loserville here, but it does mean that they're probably not going to be as strong as they were the prior year. You also have some players on that team, Dark RH, that are also getting older. Some of your frontline guys, like an Aaron Donald, who played a lot of football, and to expect them to get through another full 16-game schedule with all that they've played might be a bit much. Might be a bit much. Jose Rodriguez says, how do you feel about the Jets fans? I think that you got to give them props, Jose. They're a long-suffering fan base, and they've had to watch a lot of bad football. They've been sort of like the redheaded stepchild in that city, where the Giants are sort of the blue blood, big dogs, and the Jets are sort of your plucky, your plucky lesser team of that city. It sort of feels like a little bit from afar. But looks like they're going to do the right thing from the consensus with Zach Wilson. I hope that works out for them, because they've certainly had a hard time finding quarterbacks. They're a little bit like the Bears in like their ability to look at quarterbacks, Jose. But I think they're a loyal fan base. Like Buffalo, it's a fan base that's not just going to go wishy-washy back and forth. And that's a fan base. If you got two teams in your city, it's probably very easy to be wishy-washy and say, well, I'm a Giants fan, actually. I've had a couple Super Bowl wins the last 10 years. We've been good. As opposed to the Jets haven't done, jack diddly dandy. Bill's Bunker, thanks for the sub. So yeah, I think that they're a good fan base. They're doing things smart. The beautiful thing for them is I think their general manager is doing a fantastic job there. He has come in there and he's done some great trades to get them a lot of draft capital and to load up this team and really give Wilson a chance to, I think, hit the ground running and be successful. And they're doing it the right way. They're building up the line. He's going to be well protected back there. They're getting things done right. I think Robert Saleh was a pretty good hire too, as well. Randall says it's still not letting me donate. All right, Randall, I got one more. I tried a couple steps here over the last week with it, but I think during the thing we'll just go, during the draft, I might just go live with this without the overlays and just see how that goes, if that makes it a little bit easier. See what's happening. I might have to just like uninstall and reinstall this sucker or something. Go Hawks, bro, the accents. Dark Rage, and don't get me wrong, Seattle has made some great additions, which makes me put them in front of San Francisco for the division title next year. Well, and again, Rams could be solid, Dark Rage. So I don't want to take it from, I don't want to get across that I don't think the Rams aren't going to be good. I think they can still be good. Are they a team? I put with the moves they've made this offseason as a division front-running team? No. Would it surprise me to see them win the division? Not necessarily. It would surprise, but it wouldn't blow me away. It's just that's where we get to this little bit of that nuance point of it that I always try to drive toward. Let's get to the nuance. I'm not trying to say something in a magnanimous, it's all of this or all of that. It's just to say, with what you've seen on the surface of this, you've gone a little bit backwards. Maybe you're able to kill it with the draft and re-put everything back together again with the draft and then rely on these guys on the bench. But to think you've got 6 or 7 upper-level starters just sitting on the bench, just sort of twiddling their thumbs, waiting to jump out onto it, man, I don't know. I wouldn't have, I don't know when I would have confidence in this 10-year run of our Seahawks to have that type of confidence if we sustain those type of losses. I don't know when we were going to Super Bowls, if I would have felt that way with, okay, we just won our Super Bowl and we're going the offseason and we lost KJ Wright, we lost Max Unger, We've lost Doug Baldwin, or I guess not Doug Baldwin, but whatever, third, fourth wide receiver. We've lost Cam Chancellor. We've lost Jeremy Lane. Who else now would I draw equivalency here for on some of these guys? We lost our backup running back. We lost, would be not Zach Miller. We lost our number 2 tight end / number 1 tight end, and then still think like, again, what did you add now, Seattle? You lost that. What did you add now? Well, we added Deshaun Jackson, and then we got our quarterback position upgraded by about 15 to 20%. I think any unbiased person were to hear just that on the stark face of it, Dark Rage, in addition to understanding the coach's losses, would think, take all the Seahawks fans out of it, take all the Rams fans out of it, just take an NFL fan base in general, take 10 fans. I think 8 out of 10 would probably tell you they'd expect that team to probably take a step back. Doesn't mean they will, not necessarily, but it's just what they would maybe expect. You guys like the impression? You like my Jerry Jones? I'm going to win this thing before I die. I'm going to win it. You better believe it. This is Texas. We do everything bigger, and we win. I did. Micah Clark, just went back on the stream to see thoughts on Vasher. Great thoughts on him, and I would like him as a UD undrafted free agent if he's not drafted. I think some of the flaws you mentioned could and can be coached, but YNK. Yeah, I'd be okay with him as a UDFA. Micah, I'd be excited about him as a UDFA. He's got something that he brings to the table as a skill set. It wouldn't be like, getting the kid out of LSU that they got in the 7th round last year, who was rough and rugged and raw, and that's how he ended up as going from tight end to wide receiver to defensive end by the time he got to us. So he's got better tape than that, but definitely needs to just, if he got stronger, some of it could help too, Micah. Just more development as far as in the weight room goes too, where he's able to fight off that press a little bit better. Michael Parker says, so Lincoln Kennedy has a biological son in the NFL, 6'8", from same high school as Jermaine Kearse, Lakes. Do you know anything about this guy? I've heard a little bit about him, but I've not seen anything with him as of yet. Lincoln Kennedy was a great tackle for the University of Washington back in the day, played some years in the NFL. Big boy. I'm not surprised your son's a big boy. He was a big dude back in the day, but part of some really solid runs of some good University of Washington teams when he was playing. But unfortunately, I haven't heard a lot about him. Jose says, good Jerry Jones. Thanks, Jose. I'll do more Jerry. I'll get more Jerry out here. We're going to win. We're going to win this division. We're the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? Dark Rage, it's not hard to make the Rams the favorites when they went from 10-6 last season with Jared Goff. We will have a top 10 scoring offense and a top 5 to 7 defense. I'm extremely confident in those statements. I'm glad you got that confidence. But again, you're vaulting a top offense to a top 10 scoring offense that wasn't, I don't think, close to a top 10 scoring offense last year. And you're taking a defense that's lost some very key points and parts and saying that those parts don't matter, that those losses don't matter. And that's where I think our disagreement comes in on it. Sean Harker, I'm late to the party. Well, better late than never, Sean. Appreciate you hopping on in. Hope you're doing good, man. Dark, and I'm not saying Seattle can't win the division. Excuse me. The Rams are slight favorites over Seattle and the Niners in my book. Seattle has improved in many different areas. I think we are in agreement there, man. Any of these teams can win this division, Dark Rage. The talent level and the competition level and what these teams all are and where they all are at. That's why we are the toughest division in football. We're talking about parsing between 2 of the better teams in the NFL when we're talking about parsing, or 3 of the better teams in the NFL. When you get to that, you're getting to splitting a little bit of hairs, I think, to a tiny degree, because everything is pretty close. Splash and Skills just saw a miraculous comeback win by the San Diego Padres against the Dodgers, and Chadwick getting robbed in death along with Riz Ahmed and Steve Yoon at the Oscars. Oh wow, who won the Oscar? Splash and Skill won best actor. Dark Horse, now it's time to end the excuses for Russell Wilson. If he doesn't get them over the hump next season, it's time to start holding him accountable. Well, Dark Arch, I have been certainly one of the people on this channel to hold Russell Wilson accountable. I have not been ever a person to hold back on any criticism with Russell Wilson. So that I won't be that guy, and I think that getting Shane Waldron in here and updating this offense to a modern offense is going to do what you say. Put him in a position to take his game a step forward or to expose him for the limitations of his game that cannot be developed. It will be one of those two answers that we start to get through this season, and it will be very clear. Randall, just think if we really hit this draft like Nola did a few years ago, it's the number one way to improve your team, and this is the ultimate crapshoot. It is, and a good point on Saints a couple years ago. He just absolutely knocked it out of the park with their draft. Sometimes your teams come through and have one of those freakish drafts. You could have that, add that kind of freakish draft here, add 3 starters to this team. Oh, look out. Look out now. Ethan's, you know what, Ethan Desk World says, you know what else I find interesting? That every offseason, other people say, haha, this year will be the year that the Seahawks finish last in the division. But I can't help but notice otherwise. I noticed that too. You noticed that too? I thought it was just me. I was noticing that as well. Fish says, have you watched film on Trey Regis? He is like a faster beast mode. I would love to have him. I did watch a little bit on him. He didn't blow me away on the initial look through, Fish, but because you're saying this, I'll go back and take a look at him here before the draft. So I'll get a little bit more of a feel for him. He was okay. The speed thing was a little bit of a wonder on him, but yeah, I'll see on that. I'll go back and look at him again. I might have missed something. I didn't watch a ton of tape on him, admittedly. Go Hawks. People really thought Trask should have been the Heisman. The man got to inflate his numbers because of terrible defense and unbelievable weapons. True. And throwing to NFL wide receiving talent all over the field, just everywhere. Again, too, you watch, man, there's one game I was watching, it's like watching with Trayvon Grimes there, or watching some of these receivers, and you're just, his decision making. Good Lord. Fish, did you watch a film on Jarrett Patterson? He's my favorite third down running back in the class. I did watch Patterson. Watched actually quite a bit of film on Patterson. So he is 5'6.5", Fish. So we're into that mold of a guy that is, we're talking super, super, super tiny. He's got a little bit of that Barry Sanders mold to him in the ability to just shimmy and cut and juke guys out of their shoes. He's got that in him. He's got a lot of that jump cut ability. I think to your point, as far as a third down back out of shotgun, that's where he's at his best as a runner, where he gets it out of the read option look, and then he can kind of pick his way on the line to where he wants to go. Because he is 5'6" and so small, when you get your hand on him, he's going down to the ground. So there's not any ability that he's going to have to break tackles. This, to me, removes him as any kind of early down running back that you would look down as being kind of a bell cow back at that size. I don't think he's even kind of a Darren Sproles type, who's even a little bit bigger and I think a little bit faster as a football player. But as a guy in a third down back role, you could maybe utilize him. He's got fantastic hands. And again, he can pick his way through traffic to get you some yards if you give him some space, but he needs you to create him some space. His offensive linemen need to create him some holes, and that's something that I saw in a lot of that tape. He'd have these monstrous wide holes opened up for him where nobody's even touching him as he's running through the hole, and he's going untouched for a touchdown, which is great to see. But you're not going to get a lot of that at the NFL level. You got to be able to fight through an initial tackle. You got to break that tackle. He's only going to do it through juking. He's not going to be able to run anybody over or pull anybody through any breaking tackles in that respect. I do wonder too, how is he going to be able to hold up in pass protection as a third down back there if he gets a 6'2" linebacker who's running 250 going at him and he's 5'6"? Can he put his head in front of that guy and really stop him at any point? I don't know that he can. But he absolutely is super sudden. He's got as jukey a running back as there is in this draft. His jump cutting is phenomenal. He's got great vision. Has to have great vision for being 5'6.5". But and then again, tremendous production. 3 years of just absolutely outstanding production. But didn't play against the highest level of competition. A lot of big open holes for him to run through. I do wonder about how much I'm going to be able to use him at the next level. But I liked him. He's a fun player to watch, Fish. So I did enjoy watching his tape. Randall McDaniel says, Mike Williams, the USC Mike Williams, understood how to use his arms too, but Mig Mike was slow. Yeah, he was. It seemed like he lost whenever he gained that weight going to Detroit, coming out of USC, and I think he took a year off of playing football, and that was one of those situations that was sort of a shining example for those players who take a year off as to what happens to you. We saw this with Le'Veon Bell. You can take that year off and you look like you lost something by taking that year off. You need to stay in the sport and keep training and staying on top of your P's and Q's, or otherwise you can look a little bit step slower. And I think that happened to Mike. He got by with it because he was so big and had such good ball skills. But nonetheless, you're right. He was a little bit slow at that size. That's for sure. He got a little big. He got a little rotund at the receiver position. Randall says, how much live stream will you be doing during the draft? So I will be live streaming all 3 days of the draft, and I'm going to try to shoot for doing all 3 days in their entirety as long as my voice holds up. By that third day, it'll probably get pretty rough. I was looking at last year. We had a 9.5-hour stream on the third day. I don't know if I'll be able to do 9.5 hours on the third day, but I love you guys, and if there's anybody who's going to put in that effort and try to make it happen, I will try to make it happen. So hopefully, hoping so. Ethan Tech World, who is Zach Banner is Lincoln Kennedy's son. Just signed a 2-year deal with Steelers. Oh, is that who it was? Zach Banner was Lincoln Kennedy's son? Okay. He's just a guy then. Go Hawks. Didn't Nola get Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Latimer, Kimura, and Marcus Williams in that 2017 draft? Dang. Yeah. Yeah, they killed it in that draft. That was absolutely a great job by their part on that. Absolutely solid. Super solid by them. Derek Gilbert says, let's go get one of the Clemson wide receivers, please. Thanks. You like him, huh? He's a guy with a wide variance on where people feel like on that slot guy. I can't remember his name here off the top of my head, Derek. I'm sorry. It's a little deep in the stream here, but I knew who you're talking about. I know you're talking about he's a guy who's going to be a slot guy only. Maybe people are kind of selling on him a little bit. He was really productive there at Clemson. Probably is going to be later, probably a 5th-round pickish guy going on, but he would be potentially in Seattle's target. I think they're going to look more for a slot guy potentially here, getting Lockett back to the outside. That's been what some of the scuttlebutt out there is that Seattle's going to look to go that route with it. I don't know if they do or not, but he would be a guy I think he's pretty solid. A guy might not be a star potential guy, but at least gives you a good solid slot guy if you pick him later on. Dark Rage, I'll give you ones. There are blockers in Blythe. Troy Hill is a 3rd stringer. Troy Hill played, so again, it's maybe how you consider Dark RH the slot receiver role. A lot of defenses tend to run, and if you go and look at probably what the Rams ran defensively, they ran out of their slot, their nickel look, essentially probably 60% plus amount of the time. When you as a player are on the field for 60% plus amount of the snaps, which a slot corner would be then on the field for that amount, you become a starter in my opinion. Amari Rogers, that's who it was. I was trying to think of the name. It was Amari Rogers. Sean Harker, we should pick around 7:30 on Friday night. Maybe. I think we'll probably trade back, Sean. We got to probably pray. It's probably going to be a little bit later on because they're going to trade back, and that's the most likely pick they have to trade back at that point. Okay. We've had 3.5 hours in. I think we have hit all of the questions on this. I want to save my voice up here for this next week. I got a busy week here lined up. So go ahead and get the last of your questions in if we got anything else left to go. But other than that, we will sign this one off. I'm super stoked for this draft. Again, just to let you guys know, we will be doing all 3 days of the draft. So this will be, I'll try to do about a half hour before the start of the first day and just let it roll. So please do come on in. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. It'll be fun with the live reaction. You get to watch me freak out when it's a horrible pick. That's fun in itself. Watch me lose my stuff. I do thank you guys here for another great live stream again. It's been very consistent just getting you guys in and your support and just subbing to the channel, liking the channel. I really do appreciate all you guys do on that. I know it's a lot that I ask you and I always hammer it a lot, but you guys answer that bell every single time. Thank you for that. If you're not getting the notifications, maybe just unclick the bell and re-click the bell in the notification thing and maybe they'll reset it or something. God only knows. GoHawk says, bro, people who value slot corners in the same light as outside corners don't know defense. Yeah, I'm not saying that an outside corner isn't more valuable. I'm just saying that when the slot corner's on the football field for 60% plus the snaps, that becomes a starter-like position. He's essentially taking over for what that third linebacker would have been back in base defense of the 80s and 90s. So that it's become more and more now the league turning towards that linebacker off the field and you going to a cornerback or you going to a third safety on the field. But with the Rams, it was a third cornerback. It was their slot cornerback, which was Troy Hill, which is why he got paid a lot of money. There's slot cornerbacks that are getting paid a lot of money just to play slot cornerback. Sean, you'll be here for the draft? Love to hear, man. 283 says, praying 49ers draft Mac over Lance. Oh, man, 283, you... Well, we're the opposite on that. I'm praying they don't draft Lance over Mac. So I go the opposite direction. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching here on this stream. I do appreciate it as ever for you guys tuning in and all of you guys' support. Awesome in the chat as far as we're going again. I will be back on Thursday. We will be doing this draft. Get hyped. You never know what Seattle will do. We always know Schneider's got a little bit of a, monkey wrench or a trick up his sleeve, whatever you want to call it, a leprechaun up his butt. Who knows what you want to call it on that. Either way, thank you so much for watching. And please just don't ever forget, never forget, go Hawks.